What's going on, guys, and welcome to Season 3 of HLTV Confirmed. I am your host, James Banks, and joining me is Striker, Professor, and Mr. Sponge, who lost to Henry G, as his title does like to say. How are you guys doing? The Chad looks very confused by this, as he doesn't like his title.
I'm pretending like I didn't lose.
I only noticed it like 2 minutes before we went live. So, nice.
It's a good starting point. It's a good starting point for us. But it's 2019. We're here, and Chad, he's not looking too happy with this. But we can brush over your issues, Chad. You had to take a loss sometime, and to Henry, it's not too bad, right? You were the nice sport.
Yeah, I mean, at least his team didn't fall apart and start calling each other out on Twitter like 5 minutes after the tournament. So I think it's a moral victory in some senses.
I think that there's some loose rules with that type of tournament as well that need to probably be addressed. Like Team Russia had a player who's playing in the minor, so like let's really think about this. So maybe going forward, I will either get players maybe who play for Greyhound, for example, and we'll see what happens. Yeah. But that's later in the year. We got plenty of time before I have to worry about that again.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing that. Now, on today's episode, we're going to be breaking down just kind of some of the things that have been happening on early 2019, what we expect for the year. But the first big one we want to take a look at is the Made in Brazil reset. And that's the interesting one, right? Things have changed. Tarek's still in there. Stewie's gone. We've got Zeus in now as the coach, and Taco is back on the roster. A bit of an interesting move, and potential for them still to go for a full Brazilian lineup as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think this Tarek still being in the roster is kind of just them trying to drag it out enough so people start doubting the reports, like, maybe it's not Phelps after all, and then it's gonna be Phelps like tomorrow or something. So good shit.
I mean, we all know it's gonna happen. Like, it feels like there's just no other option. So yeah.
Look, I think the biggest point of all of this, obviously, it's really good that we're going back to a Brazilian roster that we've seen have success in the past. But I think the biggest thing that this at least points out for me is that communication is a factor that hasn't been skimped over. It gets mentioned every time we have these international rosters. But when we're talking about the best teams in the world going toe-to-toe on a weekly or, a monthly basis, when you have 5 players who were so good in the mid-round before, like Fallen's core was always built around how good they were in the mid-round. Obviously, when they started things off, it was they were more execute heavy and, when they were becoming known. But then when they were in their dominant period, or at least one where they were contending, it's because they were such a good team within the mid-round. And I think going back to full Brazilian, not having to speak English, that's going to shave, sure, it might only be milliseconds or it might only be seconds, but I think that's hugely important when you're talking about a game that is decided by decisions. And I think that's a really positive thing. It's a great for Taco. We're getting another one of these things, right, where he gets to go back triumphant. He's going home, and everybody's looking at him, and he's a key piece of this team. Now, we've seen how things worked with Phelps before. Look, there was too many aggressive pieces, but I don't know. I think he's probably had a long enough learning period away from this roster to maybe now become more of a well-rounded player as opposed to just one-dimensional. So for me, I think it's all positive signs for MIBR.
And it's not just communication, right? It's also kind of the culture and just play style clashes that we had between like those two parts of the team, the Brazilian side and the American side, where like, so, for example, on the CD side, like you saw like one of the Americans playing playing with one of the Brazilians with like Coldzera or something, and they clearly didn't really have the same synergy as they had with Falco, who used to play those spots a lot, and just you could see that they just weren't really on the same page on those sites a lot of the time and stuff like that. So that's another thing that's going to help them for sure.
I mean, who knows what could have been if instead of like Stewie, they had someone more akin to like a Taco. Like just role-wise, it didn't fit either. So all of that together kind of mixes things up and makes it pretty uncomfortable for MIBR to do anything. But they kind of went the FaZe route, but they didn't. They just didn't live up to that like high impact like the FaZe did when they got the international roster together. So whatever, going back and trying to check out the old Brazilian lineup that they had almost 2 years ago now, which I'm not sure. I'm not that convinced in it though.
Isn't it one of the things though with this lineup, right, for MIBR. They went for like the likes of Simple, they went for Nico, there was all the rumors around that. They didn't get what they wanted, right? So that's one of the big factors in, okay, we had to go for Stewie and Tarek. They're not bad players by any stretch of the imagination, but they didn't get the god tier that they were trying to aim for and trying to put this all together.
Look, I think that there's lots of layers to this entire situation. And if looking at the roster on paper, obviously adding Zeus in as the coach as well, that's a very positive element. We're very close back to that team that was winning majors together. But I think communication has to be one of the talking points for sure. Like that for me is one of the big ones. But another one, and I don't mean this in a negative way at all, because I think Fallen is one of the best in-game leaders we've had touching CSGO. But I think having to share that responsibility, or at least make way for somebody who was new to the coaching role, like YNk was as well, was probably a very big learning curve for everybody in the organization, because for him to go from the analyst desk to a coaching role, which, let's be honest, there's no criteria with the coaching role. We're all still figuring it out. We sit there and we talk about it from a position where we don't have information. So let's look at that and look at it how it would have been. So I think there's probably was a lot of there must have been clashes, right? There would have had to have been clashes in this roster, but I think now as well, Fallen goes back to being the driver, right? Zeus will be his co-pilot, whereas before, I think that I'm not going to say there's a power struggle. I think YNk, I know him personally, I think he's a very reasonable kind of guy, and from what I know of Fallen, the same can be said. But clashes in ideology can also neuter and really make it difficult for you to in-game lead maybe the same way that you felt you could before. Do I think that means that they're going to be better now? Well, I don't think you can go back to the way you were playing before. I think everybody, and this is for the good of Counter-Strike, should be looking to adopt a very similar regime as to what Astralis are doing, because that works, right? That builds a team who can win consistently. If MIBR are going to do the same and give a lot of power over to Zeus and say, look, you're the dad now. You do you, bro. We got this team. We got these people. We're going to speak the native language. We want a system. If they can do that, then I think that there's hope. But that's a long process.
I mean, can they do it though? Because previously, I don't think Zeus was a very played a role that you were describing there when he was in the team in 2016. So I'm not entirely sure that especially after the experiment with YNk, when it was clear, like you say, that they weren't really on the same page, and they didn't want the coach to have as much power, just because they just wanted to play a certain way, and they didn't really agree with what he was coming up with. So I'm not entirely sure that they will take any coach as a massive authority. They'll just take him as like a person who's there to kind of help along. I feel like from what we've heard from those previous times when they had Zeus, and from what we heard from YNk after he left the team.
Yeah, I mean, that interview that we had with YNk it came out like a few weeks ago, like a week ago maybe, but it was done at Lisbon when he was already like leaving the team, but it wasn't public at that time. YNk did say a lot of things down that line that he kind of wanted to do things a certain way. Mostly, I feel like it was outside of the server things that people simply just didn't want to listen to, didn't want to like go his way, and that was like the biggest divide between the Brazilian American team and him as a coach. So he didn't single out, but I feel like he said something along the lines like some of the Brazilian players didn't want to listen or didn't want to just adapt to what he wanted. And I don't know like what it was specifically, but it was something down the line of Astralis outside of the game, I don't know, going to lunch together, sleeping at the same time, stuff like that people just didn't want to kind of adapt their lifestyle to just be more synced as a team. So if that's true, then I don't know if Zeus can do that. Maybe he can because he's like the old buddy and he is more accomplished as a coach, but maybe we just see the same old approach from the Brazilian guys. I can't really say from this point.
I mean, I'm sure that Zeus has changed a lot in those 2 years that he was with, well, almost 2 years that he was with Liquid. So that could also play a factor. I'm not entirely sure how. Chad has said it before that we are not entirely sure which coaches have what roles in teams, but just generally from what we've heard from the Liquid camp, he has definitely evolved as a coach, Zeus. So it also might be different because from what I remember, in SK in 2016, he was more of the guy that it was like coming up with new stuff and trying to throw people off guard with some new things, new setups and things like that. not really like an overall coach as we would see in other teams. So maybe that's going to play a factor as well in that change between like the 2 years ago Zeus and now.
And that's one of the points, right, we have to look at is where they go from here, because Zeus has had a good bout of success on Liquid. Chad, one of the things I want to look at a little bit more in detail is you talk about, okay, teams need to play a little bit differently, look at kind of the things that Astralis are doing. Are you talking about more as well outside of the game than just in the game?
Look, like I think we all are aware that power within the team is not given to a coach in a lot of cases. The only team that has that, at least to my understanding, or at least that has been told to me, is Astralis, right? YNk is the guy, if you're playing poorly, you're put on the bench, for example, right? But in these other teams, this is where the social dynamic changes. Let's just keep using MIBR as the point, because I think that they're probably the best team to do that with. But you have the core right now of coldzera, Fur, and Fallen, right? The three of them is the unit right now. And let's just say you come into this team as Phelps and you don't necessarily get along with Fur. This is all hypothetical. I'm not. Yep. But the thing is, if you don't get along with a person in the core of the team, then you automatically have your head on that chopping block, right? Whereas if you give the dominion of decision making to the coach, right, to the guy who can be the big dog, then it doesn't matter. We know Fallen is a great in-game leader. We know Fur is fantastic at his very aggressive sporadic plays and reading time. We know coldzera is fantastic in clutches, anchoring bomb sites, being an all-round monster of a player. But you need to also remember that this is a game of 5 people in a server and they have personalities, and this is where I think a lot of these clashes happen. Think about when this team fell apart, right? It was this time last year. Why did they fall apart? They went to, was it WESG they went to, and they had a pretty poor result?
Yeah.
Okay, but that was the basis of all of that was coming on not them not being a good team. They literally had just won Pro League finals like only 2 months before. They just beat FaZe. You know, that was the final of the year. It was being built up, these two teams. They always missed each other. This is where it tells me that there's more problems in Counter-Strike right now than having the right players. You might have the right players, but personality-wise is the issue. Well, you can fix that if you make these people have an authority figure they have to respect, as opposed to worrying about the little social cliques that are going on within a team to begin with. I remember, like, this, you have to manage personalities, right? Like, you just have to. My team, for example, so in the early days, like Top Gun and Havoc were very boisterous guys. They would talk a lot. They were the funny guys. You know, they would yell a lot. They'd be with me in that regard. But JKS and Azza were a little bit more reserved, a little bit more quiet. So you had to kind of cater to them. Or like maybe JKS, you know, he liked to go get this coffee or this. This exists, right? Like these kind of dynamics exist that you have to worry about. And I think that if the leader of the team has to worry about that while worrying about Counter-Strike and all these other things, then it just becomes too much, and then you get too much infighting. It becomes like bloody Survivor season 243 with Jeff Prost, I think his name is. But I think that coaching needs to definitely be given that role that Yanko was alluding to. If you want teams to stick together for longer periods of time. Like, I think we start treating it like Moneyball, right? You put the best players in the server and you actually have a figure who tells them what to do.
Yeah,
okay.
I definitely agree, but it's going to take a lot of evolution from the player side, because it's just they've just been in this comfortable zone for such a long time that like transferring over to that mindset is not going to be easy for anybody. I feel like Astralis have done it. I think North are another team that I'm pretty sure works a very similar way. So those are the bright ones, I guess. But it's for the rest of the scene to kind of follow through. It's not going to be that easy, I feel like.
I mean, even when Astralis started with that, like, YNk benched, I think Karrigan was the first that was announced, like, YNk benched Karrigan. I think everyone was just like taking it like, okay, this is a joke. Like, I mean, kind of a joke. Like, obviously the players benched him, but over time that kind of built into a more kind of professional, real sports coach role for YNk.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's even that much about the coach itself. It's just the culture of the whole team, the organization, what they're trying to do, like having all of these experts on like sports psychology, on like sports performance coming in, and we have people that like trained, I don't know, Olympic athletes come and tell you something, and you're like a 21-year-old PC game player, then you probably will kind of respect that more. So I think it's just that it is a process that a team needs to go through, and it doesn't happen like just like from today to tomorrow or something like that. But you need to really commit to that, and it's not easy, obviously, because we know players, and players are pretty. I don't know how to explain it, but
stubborn, I guess, a little bit.
Stubborn, kind of spoiled as well. So it's not easy to get them on the boat for anything that entitles, like, makes them less powerful in a way. So.
And it just makes sense. Like, they've been in this, like I said, they've been in this mindset forever. Like, since the start of CSGO, we never had coaches, or we never had that kind of authority in Counter-Strike basically ever, aside from a few examples. So that's just, it's just going to take maybe a couple of years. Maybe it's just going to take Astralis dominating everybody for another year before everybody realizes that that's kind of the way to go. And then we start moving that way. I'm not sure what it's going to take, but it's definitely going to be a longer process.
I would love that.
For Astralis to dominate another year?
We're going to talk about this later, but
yeah.
I definitely feel like that's what it's going to take.
Yeah, but we won't jump ahead just yet. And before we move on to the kind of the next topic we want to cover here, what I wanted to see as well is, keeping Tarek on for this little bit longer, is this done to actually test the waters, do you think, and say, okay, can this work? Or is this just a waiting game? Because for me, I was like, why don't you just do it all at one time?
This is a matter of you own him. Let's see who wants to come and open the checkbook to pay for him, right? That's all this is. There's no point selling an asset. You don't just let a horse out of the stable for free, especially when you consider what's about to happen. The major cycle is going to be gone before we know it, and that's where teams, let's say NRG, don't do as well as what they wanted to do. That's where people are making moves, and Tarek can just stay right now, copping that MIBR paycheck, until someone comes along that he wants to play for, right? I'm sure he had offers. I'm sure there was opportunities, but if I was...
it was confirmed that Complexity kind of reached out or something, but they didn't make a deal for the major. So
yeah, I'm guessing he's not going to be cheap. Like, he has been in... How long has it been? Maybe like less than 6 months, right? It's maybe like, about 6 months. I think.
Yeah, 6 months.
About 6 months.
Cologne, from after Cologne he joined, so that's like...
So say if it's like a two-year contract and he has a year and a half left, then that's not going to be a cheap buyout from an organization like MIBR, who probably paid for him quite heftily in the first place when he was transferring over from Cloud9, similarly to Stewie. So I think that's the main factor in Tarek still being on MIBR and not getting a deal with Complexity.
Yeah. Probably he doesn't want to go to Complexity. Probably thinks he can do
could be another factor,
reasonable. Sure. Complexity is in this mindset of like, we're going to build a team, we have money and all of that, but it's also a process that, and they're not that close to being like a very exciting team for top talent from NA. As Sponge said, I think actually NRG could use someone like Tarek. I'm not saying that they should do it, but just his type, he is a more experienced player and pretty good overall. Like, who do you replace? Like, everyone's pretty good on that team, so I don't know. Not gonna go off the chart too much on that one. But yeah, also a thing that will bump the price of Tarek, let's say now, is that the major is in 1 month, and there was a deadline that people needed to oblige to get a player in time to get him for the major, so that bumps the price up as well. So that's just, I think it's just normal business, and people start just seeing that as normal business, that people sometimes skip a major because the money is just not there. So,
well, Banks, while we have this topic, do you mind if I go on a little bit of a tangent and then we can pivot back?
Yeah, mate, you do you. I know you wouldn't go on a tangent without having something valuable to say.
Because this plays into a lot of, at least you have to look, Counter-Strike has to be looked now as a business, right? It's entertainment, it's a competition, and it's a business. And people are signing contracts for very long periods of time for very large sums of money. And when they get benched or when they get dropped and they get left to one side and they don't get to play, and I'm not saying Tarek, because I haven't seen any complaints out of him. I'm sure he would love to compete and be playing right now. But there's been players in the past who... Probably, let me think. The French scene definitely.
It was NBK was the last one we talked about.
Yeah, and like those kind of things, you kind of just have to cop them on the chin, right? Because it's same thing just happened with Bolts. He kind of just, when he was left on the bench, he kind of just disappeared into obscurity until they said, "All right, Bolts, we're gonna let you go now." And now he's back playing with a very similar roster that made it to top 2 at a major somehow. But my point is, like, these are things that you have to be ready for, and then we're talking about more authority and how that's going to be taking time for players to learn or respect that authority. And then we have another one that pisses me off all the time, is that I think it's great that TOs have been talking to players and been getting things that they like to accommodate them to the best of their ability, right? But there's certain things, especially now, when a lot of things have been tried and tested, and the players are no longer experts in the field of formats and shit like that. If I was a player and you came to me and you said, "Hey, Chad, is this format cool?" and it was a format which gave me as many chances as I could possibly have to fuck up without getting knocked out of a tournament, I'm gonna be like, yeah, man, that's fucking sick. Does that mean it's the most competitive, the most entertaining, or the best format? No, it doesn't. Right? That's something else which lately has been really like annoying me, is the fact that the most entertaining format is not necessarily the one that is best for the players. And I think that is something that has to be considered when all these formats are discussed. Now, when we come to the majors, I agree. We should have the most thorough, the most fair, the most well-seeded, the best format possible in the parameters that Valve will allow, right? That's the fact of the matter. Valve is where the buck stops. But in terms of other tournaments, let's say that we have the Blast event, and I know some people here are not massive fans of the Blast format. That's fine. But if you look at the Blast tournament for what it is, it's an entertainment product on that one day, and nobody's looking at that event and saying the team that wins that event is the best team in the world for that period of time. It's a very small event, but the thing is, it's an entertainment product on that day. And I think this is now I'm going off on a different tangent. My point is that we need to make sure that we have the right people in the right places making the right decisions. Otherwise, we're going to end up just, I don't know, we'll be on leashes to the players everywhere. And that's not what we want to do. It is about the players and it's about them competing at the highest level, but we want to make sure that we get the most entertainment and the best Counter-Strike possible.
That's the problem, that they just, TOs have to compete against each other, right? Because of the open circuit, that's kind of what has to come with it, just because obviously players will just choose whatever they feel more comfortable to them. And that's a problem, right?
In the end,
in this case,
players don't choose where they're going anymore. That's why we see some players repeatedly playing Blast events, even though, I mean, outside of the actual games, they enjoy Blast events. Like the hospitality is great. I've never been there, but people have been saying that. But they don't they don't like the actual group stage. They don't like how you actually have one best of three that means anything. They don't like probably the stupid one-on-one duel whatever show match thing that is the decider for third place. But they're still going there, and we're also moving in that direction as well, as we'll just have
at the same
organizations pushing them to go to certain tournaments. And that's
I'm not entirely sure that they don't like that event. Like format-wise, I mean, sure, they're probably going to have some some reserves to it, but just generally, I feel like a 2-day event for like 250,000, and it's a pretty big tournament. So for players, just means a lot less playtime. Like generally, just traveling for 4 days in total or something. Let's say 5 if they have like a day early to prep or whatever, if they're required to do it by the organizer. But I mean, for a 2-day event, I feel like they're going to be okay with the format just because of that.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? I think I can, my positive around the Blast events and that sort is very much what Chad was saying around the entertainment, because the main thing I want to see from this as well is you look at just the successful events, and I can go to American sports as an example. You go to an NBA game and there is not just obviously the basketball itself, there is the whole show around it. And the experience I got, at least when I went to my first Blast, is I'm getting entertainment, I'm getting value. It's one day, it's realistic for, you see young families come who will bring their kids and do it, and that's a whole different side of things that I want to see come into a little bit more of a regular format, not just by Blast, because that's how we keep growing what we're doing here, right? We're all in this for the kind of long haul. We still need the hugely competitive side of things, but it doesn't necessarily mean that every tournament needs to be that way.
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean,
agreed.
I put out a tweet saying that we need more best of ones in 2019. God, like a lot of people didn't agree with me, but I think they're very enjoyable to watch, especially I mean, I'm not saying the major should be as it should be now, just because it is the major, and that should be the best tournament with the longest tournament. I don't know, most best of threes, but no best of fives, please. That's shit. That doesn't make any sense. But we need some best of ones as well, but not 3 best of ones at the same time, because then I can't watch any, and none of them make sense, especially because it's a round robin. So that kills all the enjoyment. But I want some best of ones as well. But give me a full best of one tournament. That's it. Every round counts.
One quick thing before we move on. Chad, you said about the whole benching thing. Why then do we reckon real quick that we didn't just see Tarek move to a bench position and them get this? Because surely the sooner you start with the roster you want, the better in MIBR's case.
I mean, I'm sure they've already started like a long time ago. It's just like they're taking forever to actually announce. I think that's literally all it is. That they actually
putting out tweets is harder than you think. I mean, they're probably going to make like a Noah Winston video talking into a camera. Like,
I mean,
what did he say when he fired the Immortal guys? Like, integrity over everything. So something like that, but in Brazil, in Portuguese. Maybe he's learning Brazilian Portuguese so he can make a video. That's why it's taking so long.
Well, no, I agree with both the sentiments there that the deal is probably done. They probably already know who they want to use, right? You'd want to be getting as much practice time in as humanly possible. I think that they don't need to. That's the reason they don't need to say anything. It doesn't do them any good or bad by saying anything. You know, they're fans. People are talking about it. They're getting publicity. It doesn't really matter because we know there's going to be a roster change. They've already said it's going to be a South American player. It's just a matter of time until they announce it, or until somebody like Don Hassey finds a leak and gets that out there and confirms it. So as far as I'm concerned, I think it's just, you know, why give yourself more work than you have to? Just wait and do it all at once.
All right, well, let's give us some more work. Let's move on to kind of the next cog in this wheel. So MIBR, right, they went through their changes. But where did Stewie go? Stewie goes over to Team Liquid. Now, this man ends up going all the way back. And one of the things, for me at least, is it's not to a Cloud9. He goes back to a different shirt, a different spin on things here for this man. But is this what Liquid need to kind of stop just sitting in these multiple second places and losing out so heavily to an Astralis? Is this going to be what we see as something they can actually build upon, or is there more to come?
I mean, this is definitely something that Chad will agree with, and that's just generally already been kind of talked about in the scene, is that I think that the answer to that question comes down to whether Liquid will be able to utilize Stewie in the right way, because obviously he's a different player to Taco. He's going to be in slightly different roles. And I already, I was the one doing Twist's top 20 article where he was saying that he's playing some new spots. Like in one of the questions, he was mentioning that he's learning some new spots and stuff like that. So they've clearly changed up some stuff that is definitely going to have a pretty big impact on the team. And the question if they're going to do well is how they'll handle that, right? How the roles will now fit in with each other, and that's the biggest problem that I have with it, because it's one thing that it's an obvious upgrade in firepower. I mean, over Taco, that's just undeniable. But the changes in roles could be pretty detrimental.
Well, we saw this already, right? We saw it with Mouse Sports and Stico. They upgraded to Snacks, which I think we would all argue is a better, maybe, or at least has a higher ceiling of proof that he can be a better player than Stico. I think the thing here that, sure, they're going to have to fit players to roles, and they're going to have to change. There has to be a little bit of wiggle room, right? Because there's too many big swinging dicks in this party now for everybody just to slot on in as expected. I think, unfortunately for Nitro, he's going to have to give up even more ground, which is going to suck, and probably a Liege as well. Now, Twist changing roles to different positions might not necessarily be a bad thing. I actually think, and this is a larger Counter-Strike point, I actually think teams having players in positions is fine, but I think that every 3 to 6 months you should be pretty much changing, unless you're like super switched on and constantly adapting the way you play a certain position or role, that you should be looking to update that stuff, whether it's like little bits and pieces, maybe on 1 or 2 maps, just changing things. I personally think you should be looking to address that kind of stuff on a regular basis to make sure that you're more unpredictable and you're constantly learning and keeping the game as fresh as possible. That's a different topic for another time. But I actually think that I don't think that Taco being the support player, like that role, I think losing Taco is a massive blow, but I mean that role, not having somebody to slot into it, is not as bad for Liquid as losing Zeus, because Zeus was the dad. Now, in terms of prep and what he did from a coaching position with Nitro, I don't actually know. I don't know how he prepped the players, but standing behind them, having the hype man, having the heart of the team, and sure, we get someone like Lurpus in here who's a bloody robot and says that'll have no impact. I can guarantee you that has an impact.
Did he actually say that, or is it just like a...
I mean,
he
it's just his general
doesn't think
sentiment,
about the home crowd advantage and this and that.
He's emotionless, basically.
He's a Finn.
He has no emotion.
They don't smile. But the point here is I actually think having, and I don't look, I think AdreN is a fantastic Counter-Strike mind. I think that playing against him back in the day, the strats that he would come up with back when CS was a little bit more execute heavy, I actually think he was a good mind to the game, and I think he's a good coach to get the pieces in the right places. The problem that he's going to have is he now needs to step into the boots of an emotional leader, as opposed to, like, who's going to take that role? Naf's definitely not taking that role. Lige ain't taking that role. Twist isn't taking that role. Stewie could take that role, but the problem is we've seen how fiery Stewie can be in a good way and a bad way, right? Emotional. Stewie is now the most emotional physically. We've seen, like, when he's been pissed off with Fallen after a match. So he's a very young
even
kid.
in Cloud9, he was like one of the guys.
He gives me good interviews when he's pissed off, so I'm down with that. Stewie gives me the content. I'm like, let's go, baby.
But I think this is where Steve, the manager of the team, is going to have to work overtime. That guy is probably going to need a pay rise, because in the beginning, for this major run, I think it's going to be fine. It's going to be that honeymoon period we talk about. It's going to be that new relationship. They're going to be buying flowers. They're going to be doing all that bullshit. But as soon as that wears off, or they start to go through the same heartaches that they went through in 2018, that's when they're really going to have problems, because you have big dicks like Naf who are looking at people he's friends with, like NRG, the Daps of the world he's played with many a time before, maybe people that he feels he might fit in more with, like, personality-wise, and he's sitting and he's looking, well, you know, I can upgrade them. They're looking pretty hot. Ethan's good. Breezy's good. Like, we could have a pretty sick team. He'll be looking at things like that, and I can see that now. You know, if I was going to throw predictions out there, if things don't go the way for Liquid within the first 3 to 4 months of the year, players are going to start pivoting and looking for other avenues.
Now we're talking about it, right? In terms of the loss of Zeus. Striker, you go off the back of that. I've got this mad lag because of this crappy setup.
No, it just depends on basically the opportunities, right? Like if some other North American team, like you say, NRG being probably the best example at this point, just because of how Cloud9 are looking. Or maybe, like, whatever, Automatic gets a chance to move elsewhere, and that just suddenly becomes a team that is also really like up and coming and getting better. So it just, like, whenever opportunities like that arise, I can agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, people will now say, "Oh, why would you leave Liquid? It's a better org. They have, like, better placing, whatever." But players do stupid shit, so you can't really think like that. Like, things just happen. This is, as you said, like, Dabs is my boy from back in the day. Yeah, let's go. I'm going to play with him. So people do stuff like that, and we saw organizations just allowing them to go, so who knows what will happen. Even though, like, on paper, I don't think, like, NRG can buy out someone from Liquid that Liquid wants to keep, but stuff like that, not exactly that, but that it can happen. But yeah, also I'm just looking at, like, the roster now, and I feel like shit can go very bad with these players. I feel like Stewie, we already touched on. Naf, people say he's, like, mega cold, but he also tilts. I mean, you can see that if you watch him.
100% tilts.
He tilts, but he tilts, like, internally. Like, he breaks himself in the inside when people fuck up stuff. And Taco was the guy that was, like, kind of chilling everything out. The vibe was nice. Nitro is kind of chill. Like, literally not. And Lige, I feel like also, like, he isn't like a motivational guy, but he's not tilting, but he's not really gonna pick you up either. So I feel like if it goes bad, like, no one's gonna be putting them in the right mind. And, like, AdreN isn't that kind of a. I don't see him like a guy that can, like, oh yeah, let's go boys, hype him up, and everything will be fine. So that could be a big issue. I think it could be a big issue. But also,
and that's the thing, right?
Someone put in the chat talking about roles, but that was like 10 minutes ago. I was also thinking about that. Like, Stewie, when he was, like, in Cloud9, that, like, skadoodle nothing Cloud9, he used to kind of pick up the op. He was decent with the op. There is an actual possibility that he goes and, like, just becomes the opper for, like a hybrid opper for this team. I feel like that could be a good way to do it. I don't know what you guys
that's
think
kind of what
that.
Nitro is doing right now, right? So that's just going to result into what Chad was talking about, that Nitro is just going to be the ultimate bitch of this team.
Yeah, but I think it's better that than have, like, I don't know, Naf be the bitch of the team if he doesn't want to be the bitch of the team, and then him being unhappy.
Like, Naf is the last person you want to be the bitch of the team, but it's like there's nobody else really. Like, you this was the same problem. Well, what team am I thinking of? Oh yeah, well, Mouse
maybe
Sports,
when
they had, Mouse Sports when they had basically just Chris J, right? When we were talking about Sticko leaving, that was kind of the similar thing. Like, everybody had to take, like, other responsibilities. And that's maybe what might have to happen here, because one player is not going to cut it. Like, one player taking all the big spots never cuts it.
Yeah, but I feel like just like skill-wise, Stewie could be the better operator than Nitro, but on the same time, like opping in-game leaders were like the thing maybe last 2017. I feel like that was a really good thing. Maybe not that much now. I don't know how Nitro
we
will be
didn't really have
op.
many. Like, we had Fallen basically, and that's pretty much it. We didn't really have opping in-game leaders before as much. Like, sure,
I mean, like at least like a secondary that picked it up. We had a couple, so I don't know.
If we want to just delve a little bit deeper in this, because I think this kind of thought process about Stewie as an individual and what he can bring to a team actually, in my mind, speaks a lot about the runs of Optic when they won E-League. I know we have to think back a little while, and Cloud9 when they won the major. Now, North American Counter-Strike is in the best place it's ever been. That's without a doubt, right?
Fact.
But the difference between North American Counter-Strike, I think Liquid are the exception to this rule, or at least the Liquid with Taco and Zeus. But for the other North American teams, they always, at least in my opinion, heavily relied on an element of playmaking. And you can argue that every team relies on an element of playmaking, and I will agree with that, but I feel more so than their counterparts in Europe. So the example that I would give would be when Optic won the E-League major, not the major, when the E-League event. It was a surprise, but if you go back and you watch the way they did it, it was players taking liberties in different rounds. Now, whether or not that was called, I will never know. I wasn't in the server. I would have to, and the players also wouldn't be able to recall things exactly as they happened in those kind of moments. But I remember watching that game, and one round, Naf pushes out high ramp on Train, right, for example, and gets like 2 kills, or a player pushes down Pop Dog and gets an opening frag, which gives them room. These things do tend to happen in games, but what I mean is that when they were winning these key rounds, it was a different individual stepping up time and time again. And then you look at the way that, like, now Stewie in the early days, he was a player, especially when it was him and Automatic, and they went over to Brazil and they won the event there. It was the same kind of thing. It was individuals playing really good Counter-Strike, but within the wheelhouse of their understanding of the game. Like, Stewie was really good at finding gaps, really good at those kind of plays, which they're not percentage plays. They're not the Astralis plays. There's a risk element, and if they work, you win the round. If they don't work, you lose the round. So I think thinking about Stewie in the sense of taking over as more of a sporadic hybrid player in Liquid, you've already got one, and that's Naf. So now, with the toes that could be stepped on there, this is where all these problems start to arrive. Do we want them to be structured, which is probably how AdreN would do better from a coaching position? Do we want them to now know that there are 5 players in this server who could literally take over at any point? Because that's the case now. Liquid are so stacked that any player could take over an entire game. Where do they find the middle ground? And this is such a hard learning curve for them to have with this lead-in time for the major. And I don't know how they're going to go about doing it. You obviously know which players are really good in roles. Like, I just think that it needs to be a humbling moment in the way that they approach the game. It just goes back to the earlier sentiment we had about MIBR / the Astralis YNk coaching thing, right? And I don't think that, like I said, if they don't have a good result at the major, I don't know how long they will be a team. That's the problem. That's the unfortunate matter for me. I lost where I was going with that. I went too tangent-y.
Yeah, it was a little bit all over the place. But
someone got
it from it. I feel like I don't know. Do you feel like they will still have peaks though? Do you feel like they maybe sacrificed the consistency that they had with those results that we saw, especially in the last half a year, where they basically made like deep runs every single time, aside from like ECS where they went out last? So do you think they could peak and just like win that one big event finally, but then like crash out on the next one?
I think that if Astralis didn't exist, Liquid, I could probably say this anyway, Liquid were the best team of last year, in my opinion, and I think that they are probably the best iteration of a North American roster ever formed. It's just very unfortunate they picked the time to be that peak under the shadow of Astralis. Do I think that they have the potential to win a big trophy? For sure. The thing is, we're kind of just guessing, right? Like, this might all work. Everybody might just have had a really good Christmas with their families and put aside their egos, and they're going to come out and it's going to be fine. But history tells me that that's probably not going to be the case. I think that Stewie had a really big learning period of time under Fallen, and I think that's a really good thing to be bringing across to Liquid. And first-hand accounts from Yanko, Yanko says that he thinks Stewie is sick. He thinks that he brings a lot to the team, not necessarily on the scoreboard, right? He brings a lot to the team in his communication and the way that he plays positions and all those kind of facets. So if he can come across, and let's say this is the case. Let's say everybody in the team who's there when Stewie comes in gives up 15%. 15% of like little bits and pieces that they like to do across all 7 maps in the pool. Maybe it works then, right? If you're only getting a decrease of like a couple of % of efficiency out of these players and Stewie comes in and he bolsters that position, then there is a chance that they win the trophies and they're consistent. It's just that same topic that we're going to have later is who can challenge Astralis, right? Yeah. I don't think that their wiggle room is not, worrying about not being top 2 or 3 in the world. I think that they definitely have the parts. Other teams need to get back to that point. It's can they still beat Astralis? It's going to be that same demon, unfortunately.
Yeah. I just wanted to add, like you said, if there is no Astralis, then Liquid would be the best team of the year. But would this Liquid exist without Astralis? Because they are like a mini Astralis. Deep. I'm not going to go, I'm just going to put out there and then we can move on. Just food for thought.
I guess, that's a good way to look at it too.
Yeah, I mean, we have to look at everything, especially when we're talking about these elite teams, is basically we have to put them against the Astralis, who are on this massive pedestal of the ultimate way to play Counter-Strike and how that is going to be beatable. And that's how we have to.
But I don't think we need to do that for this Liquid roster move, because it wasn't something they wanted to do. This is something they were kind of forced into.
To be done.
I don't know everything behind the scenes, but let's say it had to happen. So they had to do something.
Pieces.
And they picked up Stewie, and we should compare this Liquid with Liquid from last year. That's a reasonable way to compare.
We're also talking about how they're going to fare in 2019 if they're actually going to finally break through and take one of those titles with Stewie, which they weren't able to with Liquid because of Astralis. So we just go back to the same thing. That's my point, at least. But yeah, I get your point.
Yeah, if they're at least the same level, then they're the best North American team year 2 with a slightly different roster. But I don't know. I feel I
want to kind of look at this thing with Stewie, though, right? My issue here at the moment is we spoke about it. Okay, the emotional side of Stewie, but as players mature, as they go through this crazy esports journey, surely he can grow himself as a person, and we can see him take a bit more of kind of an overall look to be that kind of hype man that Liquid need, the power player, the guy to give them some motivation and a push forward. Is that an option, or is it still a thing where we think, no, he'll just fall into kind of old habits or how he's been in the past?
That could be the case, though. That is something, if they are going to be great, that is something he needs to be, I feel like, for this team.
Yeah. What I want to see happen as well. And then we didn't really touch on it too much, but AdreN, obviously not the one from Kazakhstan, coming in as the coach. He's got big boots to fill, but I just don't think what can he really offer them other than being kind of maybe a bit more on the analytical side than anything else. He's not going to fit that dad role that you spoke about, Chad.
Yeah, and that's why I think the manager of the team, Steve's going to have to do a bigger job, right?
I'm not entirely sure he has that personality either, though.
Yeah, I don't know either. I think it's just a hard one. Maybe they just need to try and instill a new culture within the team, because you're losing a very big figurehead. It's one that I don't even know how I would deal with in that kind of environment, because that's not something that you can just replace. You can't just bring in a person to replace a person has to be. You just have to be that way, right? I don't know. It's such a ridiculous position to try and have to fill, or even one that it sucks that we talk about in a game based around numbers and stats. But this is one of the ones that I have to just put a little mark next to it and just say, let's see if they can at least carry on something that Zeus has instilled in them.
I don't know. I just generally don't agree with AdreN pickup. I'm just gonna.
Oh, I missed it. I missed where we're at. We're at AdreN.
Yes.
Yes.
Which AdreN? Are we still on Liquid?
Not the FaZe. Not
God
the FaZe.
damn it. I thought I
American.
missed a key bit of information there. Because the next thing we talk about is AdreN from FaZe.
Yes.
But yeah,
Now,
we're
I
not-
just
we're
wanted to
not
say,
there.
like, the AdreN as a coach, the North American, Canadian AdreN,
Canadian?
I don't know, of course, like, coaching options aren't great. But I feel like that is just something, I don't see what he's going to be really bringing to this team, in this exact team. As you said, maybe for a team that needs just, like, structure, tactics, anti-stratting, maybe that is what this team needs. But I feel like if you're going to be, like, contesting for number one, you need a guy that's really, like, big dick coach.
I mean,
That's all I'm
the
saying.
thing is, like, he spent the last 2 years playing for Mythic or whatever it was, like, they're basically doing nothing internationally
Basically a
ever.
meme team.
So that's
I mean, they even literally
problem that I see with
dodged
it.
qualifying for WSG, just like not played the last game, so
Yeah.
they don't go.
Too focused
Because
on streaming.
you can't
not enough
stream on
national
Twitch
player.
from China, so
That's
doesn't-
my issue with it, that he has been out of the game for a long time, and we rarely see some of these players, or in this case, coaches, come back and have that same level of impact. Like, obviously, he was useful when he was playing for Liquid in, like, 16, 15. But at this point, 2.5 years later since we last saw him, since he basically left or was removed from Liquid, he hasn't really done anything aside from, well, basically, like, trying to teach other people how to play the game and then basically idle AFK on Mythic. So that's the big issue that I have with it. He's just not going to be within the meta, I feel like.
You're
All
saying
right,
like
well,
MDLNA isn't top tier meta.
Yeah, I'm saying
That's your words,
I'm
not
saying
mine.
exactly
Okay.
that.
someone
Let's
clip
just
this,
go.
so if he proves us all wrong, we've got that all, like,
I mean,
timestamped
sure,
ready.
if he, I mean, fucking fair
God
play,
bless. I
because
mean,
this team-
I like the guy. I watched like
Yeah,
literally all of
exactly.
his videos. Pretty good, but I'm just saying in,
I mean,
in
he
terms
has a
of
mind for the
coaching,
game for sure, but
Pretty
more
good,
like,
but you thought he was Canadian. Huh?
isn't he
yeah,
Canadian?
he said,
No,
he
he's
said he was
American.
Canadian. Yeah, he's American.
Now I don't like him anymore.
Oh, okay,
Jesus
okay.
fucking Christ, Prof.
Well, we can move away from the Americans before Prof goes down some crazy, like, Trump-esque rampage, and we're going to go to the additions here for FaZe.
Build a wall between
AdreN
Canada and America.
and a different AdreN. All right, that's definitely getting put in there somewhere. I'm trying to click our little button here. Hopefully, Lucas can help me, because this whole system is just breaking down on me. But the next one we're going to is FaZe adding AdreN and YNk. Now, AdreN, let's start with that one. This is the AdreN from Kazakhstan. This is his chance on a big international team. This is his chance to shine. It is a stand-in position, but I kind of like it, man. I'm a fan of him, and I think he's a guy who can fit many roles. Like, he's not going to have the big ego going into it. He'll just slot in where they want him to. It's just whether he'll perform up to standard or not.
I mean, the thing is, like, he may not be actually slot in too much, because they actually were pretty adaptable when they were playing with, like, Chrome, and when they had Exist, they were switching things around a little bit. So I'm not entirely sure that that's going to be the case, that he's just going to slot in everywhere where they don't want, well, nobody wants to play, basically. Like, they're just going to shift it around a little bit more as a whole, I feel like.
Speaking of which, where the fuck is Croman? Because that's who I would have been
Yeah,
getting.
that's true.
It would have cost
Yes.
you absolutely nothing, and he already played as a role player in the team.
But
and if he's gonna,
they obviously didn't like him though.
that must
It
be
was-
it, right?
they
That must
literally
be the
didn't- they
only
didn't
thing.
Okay,
rate
wait
him.
a second. I'm jumping in there. If you're going to say they don't fucking like him, this is one thing
No, I'm not saying
Really
as a
fucking
person.
pisses me
I'm
off.
just saying as a player.
No. I don't. I'm just saying, if this is the reason, this goes out to any fucking teams in there. If you don't get on with someone, you're paid a ridiculous amount of money. You don't have to get on with them personally. If they're good in the server and they put in results, just fucking deal with it. Stop being pathetic little cunts. That's what tilts me to no end.
That's the problem that we're always going to have, though, right? And the problem is, that has to be it, right? They didn't like him or what he brought for whatever reason, right? That has to be the case. And I can't put my finger on why that would be, because at least from the outside looking in, he looked like he was fitting that role very well. Now, maybe he didn't communicate as well, or maybe he didn't do this, or maybe he didn't do that. Now, there's nothing that we can ever... It's not tangible for us. We can't possibly know. But from the outside looking in, he looked like an adequate player for that team. And you consider the player whose position he was taking was more of a playmaker, and that allowed Rain to actually go for more of those things. Well, right now they're still not going to have that, right? You're going to have your trio, which has to be Olaf, it has to be Guardian, and it has to be Nico. That's the trio right there. Now, if you're bringing AdreN in to be he's another anchor, right? That's what you're looking for. If you're going to go for a team that doesn't have a traditional in-game leader, then what you're aiming for is you got your trio, your pack of the playmakers and the stars, and then you have the two other guys who you just let be the bomb site anchors, or the players on the retake, or the guys who are, doing on the T side, the less ideal or less I guess, star roles, and that can be filled by anybody. And the fact that he's already played with you, you know that his English is good enough. I thought that would have been a good one. Now, AdreN obviously is a very good player. He has a lot of experience. He's won a major. He's been playing Counter-Strike for as long as all of us out there have been watching.
Oh, yes.
He brings a lot to the team in terms of that, but they already have a hugely experienced team. Like, it's not like they're full of young chickens. They've got Olaf, who's won majors before, right? It's not like they're lacking in that department by any means. So I'm curious with the choice, considering how many players could possibly have been chosen from. But I actually think this is something which might be a new idea for, like, I don't know if they're actually going to go with this, but it could be an idea, is that FaZe could change this 5th position every couple of months. Why the hell not? Right? Like, why couldn't that be a new viable strategy to have it? You have players who are quite versatile. You throw in a new element every now and again. Very difficult for a team like Astralis to read you all the time, and FaZe got close on a couple of occasions, so I don't know.
But they're saying, like, we won 3 events for 3
as well.
Yeah. What do you say?
Yeah. I think, wasn't it FaZe that sent Astralis, like, gave them the tough run where they put them into the lower bracket? Was it Chicago or something?
No,
they did
2-0
them at somewhere.
Yeah, they 2-0'd them somewhere quite recently.
I think it was Chicago in the group stage.
That was one of the things.
Yeah, that was Chicago group stage, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So this is what I mean, that they've got the power in them. It's just, maybe unpredictability is somewhere they can go with it. And shit, you're not going to be able to predict AdreN playing anything at some standard for them.
It's just another interesting one. But in terms of if I was to quantify it on paper right now, I think it's an adequate stand-in to have. And then it just depends from Yanko's interview how much reading he gets. How much reading? How much reading. Power he gets.
He might be studying up, lads. You never know.
Maybe he likes to read. I don't know.
Yeah. He's studying up on the art of, war and applying that to it.
Not a bad idea.
So what you're saying, Sponge, is that they're going to try the 6-man roster, but with 5 people. But no, 4 people, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. I think that's the solution.
Cool. Yeah.
That could be the solution.
It's a cool approach.
It's new meta.
But I mean, but I mean, if we want to switch over to what Sponge said about YNk and him getting the power, I mean, YNk did say in that interview that he basically, like, the next team he was going to be in, he was just going to make sure that they realize what he wants from them, right? What he wants to have in that team. So if he actually did join FaZe 7, and he obviously did, then it must mean that he got what he wanted, right? Or at least close to it. Maybe it's just Nico.
Maybe it's all talk.
Yeah, could be.
Because I don't see how this team, number one, this team is 5 different countries, 5 different, like, okay, you have 2 Scandinavians, okay, that's kind of similar. Guardian is like Eastern Europe, but he's not like a classic Eastern Europe. He's more like you, striker. So you have Nico, he's like a classic Balkanian guy, classic Balkan guy. And then, it's not an insult, it's just like, it's just a fact. I mean, he's just like kind of normal guy, doesn't like to like party and stuff like that. He's married already. What? I'm just saying, it's like culturally, they're so different. And we have AdreN from Kazakhstan, who's 27 years old, been playing the game for 10 years. So what he's tried to do with like the Brazilian guys, he wants to do like an Astralis type, like everyone be on the same page. We need to do like whatever, military drills or something to make.
I'm not entirely sure that's what YNk wants, though.
Maybe not to that extent, but to some extent, I don't see how this team will ever do that. It's just not, they practice when they're at events, maybe boot camp here and there, but they're like all in their own countries, playing like all the different stuff. I think that's one of the things that people don't understand with Astralis. They're like so close to each other all the time that they can actually do these things on a pretty much easier than other people can do. And also they've been playing, like 3 of them been playing together for 6 years. Same language, same culture, all of that stuff. So I don't think that, just for me, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Yanko, on this team, it does make sense, but not from what he said after leaving MIBR. I don't see that happening. It's going to be more of the same, I feel like.
I mean, it depends on the synergy between him and Nico, I guess. Because
yeah, I mean that is gonna be great, but I don't think all of the other players will be like bought into what he wants.
No, I don't know. Like I feel like Rain definitely could be. I don't see why Guardian shouldn't be, because he's always been kind of like a really, really dedicated person. From what I know, Guardian.
Except when he
Guardian just wants to win.
I'm sorry, what?
Except when he didn't want to go to boot camps.
But wasn't that around his wedding or something though?
I don't know. It was before that.
I don't remember this.
It's like a simple
sure. But it's just like knowing Guardian for a very long time. It just feels like it. Why shouldn't this team be able to do that? Like, sure,
and also they don't have a fifth player. They have a stand-in.
Well, yeah, that's the problem.
That really doesn't help when you're trying to
instill
culture or do whatever.
But I mean, like at the same time, like this could definitely be a trial for AdreN. Like he's going to be in that team for almost 2 months or something. So like for him, if he actually does well, he could definitely stay there. Like I don't see why FaZe would just suddenly start looking into somebody else if AdreN actually does well, if they do well with him, and if he actually fits in. So
I hope so.
Yeah. So for him,
I'm still a fan of the AdreN situation. Yeah, I see it as a chance for him to shine in a team that's not from the region he's always been stuck playing in, and he can fill a lot and he can have some input. And okay, you might not agree that he fills in all the roles to just kind of sit in the bitch role the whole time, but I do think he can bring something to that team that isn't there at the moment, because he's not going to be that star player at the moment. That's not what we're looking for from him.
I think that if we talk about FaZe with Karrigan, then we can look at FaZe not having Karrigan on the team. It's going to be very similar to when Astralis benched Karrigan, right? This is the thing with poor Karrigan, and this is just unfortunate, but he's obviously a very good in-game leader because he's managed to get multiple teams to a point of potentially being the best or arguably like a top 5 team. That goes without saying, right? The problem is when you do what you've done and you get so close and you don't achieve the goal that everybody wanted to achieve, and you didn't do it as consistently as what you wanted to, and you're more of a boisterous kind of guy. You're definitely the figurehead. You're definitely the leader of the team. That when things start to crumble and fall apart, that's where all the eyes go, right? And then as soon as your teammates lose faith in the way that you're in-game leading, you might be making the perfect call. Right? You could call the perfect strategy. You could have a team absolutely fucking booked. But if your teammates don't believe in the words coming out of your mouth, it doesn't matter what you're saying, bro, because they're not doing what you're telling them. And I think, unfortunately, that's the same thing that happened for Karrigan when he was in Astralis. Now it's the same thing that happened to him when he's in FaZe. So if you just think about this from a FaZe perspective, for the 4 players playing without Karrigan and an addition of a new guy, no matter what happens, they're going to play with the heart and belief. Now, you can say like, oh yeah, but you shouldn't think that way, this, that, and the other. That's not really the way the fucking brain works, unfortunately. That's why like we fall in and out of love with people. It's just the way things are. We're just these beings full of meat and this stupid brain up here that makes decisions on its own. Now, that's the problem that we have, is that they're in a position where they had a good in-game leader. Now they don't have a good in-game leader. Like, I'm not saying Nico's a bad in-game leader. I'm just saying he's not a traditional in-game leader, and it definitely would detract a little bit, because now there'll be a lot more pressure in that kind of regard. But in terms of the workflow between Yanko and Nico, fantastic. In terms of they're going to be starting with a clean slate mentally, fantastic. And in terms of the firepower within the roster, if everybody is looking at this as a chance for them to have that reboot, then the potential for them off of a player break where Astralis can't counter-strat them as hard and look for their tendencies, there's a huge chance for this team to do really well at the major, right? And upsets galore. I feel that's going to be coming in Katowice for sure, because teams are going to be caught off guard by all of these movements. So all in all, for the short term, leaving him as a stand-in, I don't mind it, because what's the point of making him a full-time player when you're allowed to have this trial period? Like, there's no reason you can't. If the major is your main focus, which it 100% is, there's no need to okay, well, you're a full-time player, and then they lose the major, or if they suck at the major, then they're going to kick him anyway. May as well just, hey, stand in. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, try someone else. There's plenty of other people out there on the street corner.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, it's not like the major is the only thing they're going to play. FaZe have actually already committed to both, is it IBA Power and what is the other thing? E-League. So that's already two events that they're going to play in the first month only. And I mean, then I don't think there's anything else that they can play before the major starts, which is like midway February. But still, it's not like this team is just going to come into the major completely new. Like they're going to have some, and that's like there's obviously downsides and upsides to it, right? The downside being that what Chad was talking about, about reading this team, but they're just going to have some games that people will be able to look at, and at the same time, they're just going to have actual official matches to kind of test out the lineup, right? So that's like that depends how they calibrate it, whether they're going to be able to do well at those first two events, and how that's going to play into the major.
Yeah, and I mean, FaZe always said, I mean, at least these players that are still in the team, that they like to practice at events. Like for them, practicing is not that good. They just like to play actual events, so that's good for them as well. I mean, just on the player base, I like AdreN. I feel like he could fit in pretty well. Just, I think the only question mark for me is his English. I mean, he can speak English, obviously, but in game it's a different thing. So he usually, I mean, used to kind of be like a secondary caller, give an input, and that is something that might be needed. But I'm not sure how well he can do it in English. That's the only thing I'm kind of worrying about. But otherwise, I feel like it's good. I feel like it could be a pretty sick roster. And if we don't see, we'll talk about that later, I guess, when the Astralis thing. But either you can beat them, Astralis, at their own game, or you can do something completely different and kind of find a counter to it. And this way of thinking, this could be the counter to Astralis. It's like completely different, but just like 5 sick players together, and all pretty experienced. Not like 5 kids playing. So maybe this works. I
mean, this is definitely not a team that would try to beat Astralis at their own game. Like this is not. Yeah, this is not what they would to do. Like they're definitely gonna go their own route.
Yeah.
So but yeah. I mean, I could see it. I could see it working. Also, see the same issue with AdreN. It's always the same thing that we talk about whenever somebody who has been playing like local teams and that don't speak in English as their first language, and then they can go over to an international lineup. There's always that period, right, where you kind of discuss whether they're going to fit in like communication wise and culturally as well, because the CIS region, it's also another thing where they basically have a certain play style as well, like generally a little bit more aggressive, slightly looser. So that's another thing that's going to play a factor into this. Could actually work with FaZe just because they are kind of like a CIS team at this point with their play style. So I don't know. I could see it both working and both failing horribly just because of him not fitting in communication-wise.
Yes, and someone's in the chat saying that like AdreN's English is good, like on streams and stuff. I mean, I talked to him, did interviews. Yeah. His English it's okay. But
he's always been the one to go for the English.
Yeah, that is true. Like he was the default interview guy for Gambit. But
it's
different in game and calling stuff and calling for others, not just calling for you. Then you have additional responsibilities.
And playing.
But it's just that. You're going to be like a couple seconds delayed. Sorry, James. I know you're like you can't hear.
Oh no! Fuck this stupid setup.
Don't worry about it. But yeah, like there's always going to be that 2-second delay, like whenever there's pressure situations where you're going to be like, oh, he's you want to say something and you just doesn't come out because you don't know the right words at that point, and that's just that it just takes a while, and like it's from person to person whether it takes a month or two, and then if it's going to be enough by the major, who knows.
All right, what we're going to do is I was one point I was going to touch on there while I'm lagging behind all of you. It's just the whole thing of when I spoke to Hobbit, when he was saying going to do it in English, it was a big thing for him actually, where he was like, this is harder than I ever imagined. Now, AdreN's English is a little bit better, but it is going to be the real testing ground to it. Now, I think moving on from this subject to go on to kind of who missed their opportunity. And you know what that means is we've seen so much of this crazy roster swaps, but some teams we may have expected to make changes didn't come into play. Now, one of them, and I did the interview, I think it was a Pro League, Chad, you might be able to remember, when I spoke to Simple, one of the wings he ended it with was like, just wait until after the major. So they've already got it in mind of like, okay, we're just going to get the major out of the way, but he wants changes. And it very much seems that they'll just kind of build something around him at this stage, and pieces are going to have to move because they've done well, but they've not done well enough. And I think he's getting bored of just trying to carry with Electronic kind of helping out every now and again.
Everyone wants
to fish it. I'm just
okay, bye, let's go. Next one.
Yeah. Okay, Prof, you go.
I'm not sure if they missed out, right?
You know?
Well, tell me what you guys think they should have done considering the landscape.
I'm just saying, imagine now AdreN sticking with FaZe after the major. So they miss out on a classic AdreN to Edward AdreN roster change that could have happened. That maybe that is going to happen. Maybe that's why AdreN isn't like a trial. Maybe that's why he's a stand-in. Who knows? But just that is one example of things that they could have done. Hobbit is also now signed. So they're just like, people are moving. Who are they actually going to get now? Who could they actually get?
Well, there was that meme where like Hobbit became available and Edward suddenly started playing well.
Yeah.
then kind of the same thing happened with AdreN, right? But yeah, it's those two players definitely are like the main two people that they could have been looking at and potentially like considering for replacement. And those opportunities have like that ship has sailed right now. Especially as you say, like if AdreN actually ends up sticking with FaZe, like there's not a big pool of players that Navi can actually dip into. Like who else is there that's like semi-available and could fit into Navi at this point? Like I can't think of anybody.
All right, boys, strap yourself in. Put your seatbelts on.
Let's go.
Oh god.
All right, hear me out. We're Navi. We go to the event. We come top 8. You know, whatever. We're done. Zeus has already made comments that he might, be retiring anyway. Simple's comments, etc., etc. All right. We're obviously keeping Simple and Electronic here because we're not crazy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Flamey,
No.
We're going to leave you chilling over there for 1 second while we discuss these other options, my dude. Now, Simple, you should not be ever put in a position, my bro, where you are a primary AWPer for a team. You are too good to be pigeonholed as a primary AWPer. Let you just roam and dome. You secondary AWP when you want. You're like a bloody thermometer. You're feeling it. You're ready to go. Whatever. You just do you. So you're over there chilling with Electronic. You guys are like, I don't know. Who knows? They're having fun. They're having a picnic. Now I'm getting on the phone and I'm going, Angel, what's up, bro? It's been a long time since you've played with a native-speaking team. And you play with some very, wild, sporadic type players at the moment. You want to come over and try and tame the best player in Counter-Strike history. And he'll be like, 1 second, I'll be right there. He nips on over, he's there. The three of them are having a picnic. Now we're thinking, all right, we've just taken Simple away from that primary AWPing role. We need to fill those boots. Who can we get? I'll tell you who we can fucking get. We get James from Avantgarde. We get that kid in. We put him in the team. Now we've got our 4. Now we go back to Flamey. We say, Flamey, are we going to have these emotional issues anymore? And he's going to say, no, boss. And then we're going to chuck Flamey back in there. Flamey's going to anchor the bomb sites. Angel's going to make some sick calls. James going to AWP some people. And Simple and Electronic continue just to kill everybody. And now,
can I ruin your dream, Chad? I got to ruin it, man.
Oh, wait, there's one more piece. I got the last piece.
Okay.
We get Blade as the coach.
Oh.
Yes.
There we go.
But I'm going to ruin your dreams about Angel. He's had these offers before. And he does not and will not leave Hellraisers. I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard rumblings of him having like shares or like backing in Hellraisers as well.
I can actually
the problem.
I can clear there. Even though I did an interview with him, it's not like done yet. It will be published, I guess, before the major or something. Long story, but I touched on that as well. He said that he has like a minority share in Hellraisers.
There we go.
But it's like mega small, maybe not even. It's like nothing significant, and that didn't stop the Navi deal. Like it was just Navi not paying enough. That's it.
Ah, okay. So
I mean, he didn't say Navi didn't play enough, but that is all. What else can stop it? He was interested in doing the move. It's not like he didn't want to do the move. It was just Navi.
I have to. I mean, I was going to ruin Sponge's theory a different way, just because, like, of course, Angel is going to be the player that you look to, or the IGL that you look to after Zeus. Like, there's nobody else. Like, you can't really look at anybody else from the region and say there's a better option. But at the same time, he's erratic as fuck. Like, he makes a lot of mistakes individually. Like, he's not going to be better than Zeus on overall, I feel like.
I think that he
throws away as many rounds as he wins, like, with that aggression.
Yes, I'll agree with that sentiment, but I also think about what he is dealing with sometimes. So we're talking about how difficult communication is. Now we're going to talk about how difficult communication is not only So sure, the European thing's one thing, right? Rain, Olaf, Nico, Guardian, those boys, right? Now, like you said, they're more leaning towards the CIS side of things because of the AdreN pickup. But at least historically, before it was mainly like people from, the Nordic region. At least that was the majority before. This team is so insane that it doesn't make like any sense in my mind. Okay, so the Hobbit pickup kind of changes things a little bit recently, but like, man. Like, you have a guy from Turkey playing with a guy from the bloody Kazakhstan. Like, what is even going on in this world? Like, it doesn't make sense. So, like, I think that doesn't alleviate Angel from making dumb decisions. I agree that he occasionally goes for these plays which don't make any sense. But I think in terms of at least what I noticed from the baseline of the way that he structures his team, he tries to get the best out of his players as opposed to what I sometimes see happening with Na'Vi, where they just like run down the clock. Like, obviously we can debate, that to the cows come home, but I think that like the personnel change and the way that Counter-Strike has changed in a lot of ways, and you have the talent of Simple and Electronic on your team. I don't know how I would utilize them, but I'm just saying that I think that maybe allowing them to do a little bit more playmaking might be a really big thing.
I'm sorry, just till the cows come home. Is that something you use over there in Australia?
Isn't that not
I've
the
never
same?
heard
No, we use it in
before.
UK as well.
I swear to God.
We use that.
I haven't heard it before.
It is.
No, we use
Okay,
it.
fair enough.
It is.
Just
okay.
Googled
bad.
it. It means for an indefinitely long time. Those two
Okay.
could talk till
Yeah.
the cows come home is the example.
Okay, cool.
No,
TIL.
It's a good saying.
I think there could be something with like Angel in a Russian-speaking team. That is also something we talked about in that still not published interview. How difficult it is to do anything in a second language. Like, you can say 50% of what you mean, and then the other guy understands 50% of that. So that's not like going great. And it's obviously, as you said, it's different for FaZe and Mouse Sports, and it's different for Hellraisers. That's because their level of English, like, nothing against the guys, great guys, but just it's not great. So it's pretty difficult with all of those different cultures. We know like Voxic and Isa are pretty fired up guys. Hard to control that. Probably needs to do a lot of micromanaging, stuff like that. So
No, he said it. I spoke to him just at the face at Major Gone. One of Angel's biggest criticisms was we're on the server playing with these guys like so much, and they spend time messing around when they should be taking it seriously. And it's like trying to micromanage them and get them into some habits because they put themselves in bad habits in games where they should be taking things a little bit more seriously.
Yeah.
True. But we're still only on Na'Vi. We have like 10 other teams to go through. No.
Yeah, there's a lot more than this. There is a lot more than this.
I mean, Na'Vi is
one
definitely
thing
the
from
main
chat.
one, though. Like, I was definitely thinking about that one for sure.
I didn't
not sure
expect them to do a move, though. I was expecting them to
I
not
didn't.
do
I didn't
anything.
expect them to do either, but I felt like they should have when they had the chance. But yeah, like with what we've heard from Zeus, and just generally with Edward kind of looking like halfway through the chopping block for like almost like a year now, then I felt like they definitely missed out. But yeah, they're just not the type of team that changes a lot. Basically, they just change whenever they have to, whenever they're put into that situation. But they rarely do it themselves. They rarely initiate it. So that's I expected
that would
them
be
not to.
Interesting something to look at, just like which orgs did the least roster changes. It seems like
it was like it must be Na'Vi, right, over the years.
Yeah. But I also think like the Zeus thing is a bit overplayed. I mean, he likes to talk a lot. I wouldn't really think that he actually like is planning actively to retire. It's just like, if it goes well, I'll retire. Like, whatever. I don't think it's a really hard decision from him. Like, 2019, that's it. It's like, just push it as long as it goes.
Yeah,
maybe
right?
Simple announced that he will retire him if he doesn't retire himself. Maybe that's what.
Oh God!
Yeah, this is enough.
I don't want to think about that. That's not a world I want to live in. Now, before we move on from the Na'Vi thing, there's just one thing I want to know what your guys' thoughts on this. Obviously, the idea of 100% this is true. The Gambit bit makes sense, but it says Gambit and Avangard buyouts are really high. Na'Vi can actually take people from Spirit. There are as well the new CIS League and Face It by Zeus, where he is scouting people and can move to manage a position later on, or potentially, I guess, coach one of them younger teams. Any thoughts on that, lads?
Bro, if you're Zeus and you have that CIS League, you're just printing money. Why the fuck would you why would you care about managing a team? Just just
Maybe.
be a big dick in the community. And
I mean, he does have ties to like the Prosto team, like the CIS team that now has like some issues for the minor. So maybe he just goes there so he can shoot more content for his YouTube channel that's like mega popular. So, life. Yeah,
I don't think Zeus has to ever worry about money again. Yeah. So in terms of that kind of stuff, look, I think that's a lot of that's speculation and stuff that we don't unfortunately have the facts of the matter on in terms of those buyouts and those kind of things. But I think if you want something bad enough, you can make it happen. So yeah,
agreed.
I mean, I'd be surprised if Avantgarde had the type of backing to be able to actually have big buyouts. Like, sure, they can have a big buyout, but if they don't really have it backed by like a decent salary, it's not going to hold up. Like, those players are not going to stay there just based on some like really bad contract. I feel
they should just do it the Bulgarian way.
Not in the CIS region. Like, basically anything outside of Navi and maybe like Hellraisers in that region is not like, well, okay, Gambit is not Gambit, like super legit organizations that just have like well thought out contracts and stuff like that.
Yeah, as I said, just do the Bulgarian way. Unanimously, like, bro, well, like the contract is out.
That was Space Soldiers, but Poison as well, yeah.
Poison as well. The contract is no longer valid unanimously. It's like, wow, the B Pro is like, well, we didn't say anything. I'm in Windigo. Look at me, top player. Yeah. It's like, okay, like, whatever.
Some of these organizations, like, it's not going to hold up. Like, they don't have the level to hold it up, to hold up their players when somebody like Navi comes knocking. Like, it's not going to happen.
Only the Brazilian orgs, though. Those are like hardballing.
Oh yeah, that's true. They seem pretty legit. Yeah.
What we'll do then? What's the next team we want to look at here? Right? What's the next one that you guys think should have been?
NIP should have done a roster move like 6 months ago.
Really?
I don't think this team has been.
The problem is, like, in Sweden, the problem is like what move? Like, NIP and Fnatic have been going through a bunch of moves, even like coming with like new players coming in, and none of it has worked to the point where they returned anywhere near to their former glory, right? Like, sure, Fnatic won a couple events at the start of the year. NIP have actually like looked okay. Like, a lot of the people say NIP have improved, and just obviously they made it up to their rankings, but they haven't gotten nearer to being a title contender. I don't think so. No. Like, they've just generally become a little bit more consistent, and that's pretty much it. Their peak is still very low, so that's the problem that I have with it. And just none of those Swedish moves have worked out in the past like year until maybe Fnatic and Brawl now.
Yeah, I think this Fnatic lineup is pretty good. I mean, when it actually happened, I did say on the show that NIP would regret not getting Twist. I don't know if that was possible from NIP, whatever, Twist being Twist didn't want to join maybe.
Yeah, Twist just turning down.
I think they turned him down like 3-4 times or something.
Yeah, but still, if that was a possibility, they don't have an IGL and they don't have an upward. So how can you be a top 10 team? Like a top 5 team. They can be a top 10 team, but anything better than that, I think it's just like, it's not going to happen. That's my end of discussion for NIP.
I think the problem is with that entire scene is because they had 2 teams towards the top for so long and they didn't really nurture the grassroots.
The young guns.
That they've kind of found themselves in a position where you have to take a risk, right?
Yeah,
that's the fact of the matter, and the risk Fnatic has paid off.
Guys.
Yeah, well, like, even some of those guys, was it Existence Galaxy who played at the DreamHack Winter?
Yeah,
there's a couple. Yeah, and there was another kid as well, and I think that unfortunately, for some of these bigger names, or even if you fragment things more and you have to go 6 months to a year where you have 3 teams who maybe all slot somewhere into the top 15, but nobody's, at least you can nurture everybody, because they didn't do that for the longest period of time, and now that everybody's kind of split up between different rosters anyway, I can't see it hurting. This is no offense to some of the older dogs who have performed fantastically over their careers, but some of the big names are definitely having one foot out the door now, right? Like, they probably still have the desire to play and compete and win, but the fact is Counter-Strike has changed now to such a point where you're looking at the Ropses, the Brolans, the Sergeys of the world. You're watching like an Ethan, for example. Like the fact I just put Ethan on the same level, a lot of people would be very surprised. But mechanically speaking, their crosshair placement, the way that they approach the game from just a solo point of view, is at a level that I haven't seen before. Counter-Strike is definitely growing, and these kids are learning quicker and quicker. And from what I've heard about Brolan, for example, he's now the person in the team when people are tilting, telling people to calm down. He's a 16-year-old kid. The way that Counter-Strike and the avenue in now, it's no longer just about are you good enough, like in the server. There's so many other things, the mindset, everything. So I think that this year, like we spoke about it, we our whole thing on the desk, the changing the guard, people might watch the segments and go, oh, this is just a bullshit storyline. But it legitimately feels that the names that were synonymous in the early stages of CSGO are now trickling off, like to almost obscurity now, where we're not going to see them anymore, and all these new young kids are coming up. That's inevitable. That's always going to happen. But it's happening at such a rate that I didn't expect it to be like this. So there's a lot of players who you guys do your thing during the HLTV.org top 20, where you ask who's a player to look out for, those kind of things. I think that that's more and more poignant now than it's ever been, and I think that this year it's very, very easy, like for us to sit here and go, yeah, they probably should have made a roster change. Like North, for example, there's so many good players in Denmark. It is insane. Like you're going to be curiously, how long are some of the names in this North roster going to have to prove their worth, right? Like this is another question mark. They're a team in the top 10 right now. They're coming in at 10th, who you could argue that there's a lot of other players, if they wanted to make changes to see what happens, they're a team that could be in that list. I think that Cloud9 is just an absolute mess, and I think if they're allowed to play in the major by abusing that rule, it's obviously very unfortunate that Golden is sick, but at some point, this is a whole different discussion. I don't think we want to get into that, but at some point, certain things have to be decided upon. I know what's going there. I think that G2 have finally now taken a risk on, they're not unknown, but they've finally, had to stoop to a level where they think, okay, this is the talent of tomorrow. I think there's a lot of this stuff. I think that you could go through a lot of these rosters and you could say they missed out. Heroic are another one. Some names out there, especially. I think Nato Safix is a very good player. But I don't know. Yes. I don't know where these names slot in, right? Renegades, Jacob, does he want to go back to Europe? How long do you want to live in North America for? If it was me, never. So, there's so many questions here. It's just like, I'm really happy we saw Tyloo make a roster change.
Yeah, that was kind of unexpected. Like, you don't really think about them or what they can actually do, but...
I mean, it finally happened that Mo exited that lineup, right? Because that was he was the one that I saw in the chopping block for the longest time, and it didn't happen. So that one I was waiting for a very, very long time, for sure.
It still boils down to the communication a lot. I have no idea what it's. I mean, I know what it's going to be like. It's going to be bad because it's always bad. Because these Chinese players literally really don't know good English, like basic English at all. So it's going to be tough. But at least they're better individual players, so they have a higher ceiling, more upsets. People really figured them out. Like, they finished the year number 26 right now. They were top 16 for the most of the year, maybe top 10 peaking. They had a decent year, but now they're really tough. I mean, of course, it's the roster change as well that lost them points. But while you brushed over other teams, I went into NIP and I calculated their average age, 26.2 years old. They have two 28-year-olds, and Forrest that is 30, so that's enough. Lekro is 25, and Rez is 21 now.
Lekro is a new player, but he's not young. He's still, like you say, he's 25, so that's the problem, right? But we've been talking about this for maybe the last couple of years, that we've had a change of the guards, and we see some of the old players leave the scene, and new players come in. We were talking about some of those Sergey, Brolan, those guys, just people that are basically. We were actually talking to Peter about this when Twists and Robs made the top 20. Those guys are younger than CS itself. They're born in late 99. So that's something you have to think about as well. Nowadays, top 20 players, at least a couple of them are younger than CS itself. Well, Get Right and Forest, and when you look at Zeus or Gobby and those guys, those veterans have been around forever. And you have two of them on the same team, so that's one of those things. And Dennis as well, he's been playing since 2K 2008 as well. like when he was in SK for a short while in 2010 and stuff like that. So it's just like, it's one of those things, like they have to realize that's something that's happening in the scene, and they have to start acting on it. But because like right now they're just not moving up anywhere close to where they want to be, I think.
Yeah. All right, fair points on that. We got any other key teams we want to pill out here before we start to move on?
I think we kind of brushed over the most, like the biggest ones overall. There's a lot.
The biggest ones for sure, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, what we're going to go into next is our GG.bet little segment here before we get towards the last few topics of the show. So I believe Lucas is going to bring us up all the juicy info for that. Remember, only bet if you're over 18. If you haven't got the money, don't be stupid. Don't do it. And we are going to go and give our own thoughts on what's going to happen on the minors. Striker, are you kicking this one off?
Well,
Which one did you get?
It's not actually showing up as far as I can see, but it should be. It should be basically like the favorites. Oh, there we go. It should be like the favorites at every minor,
yeah.
based on GG bet odds, right? So you can see for the Americas, the minor, you have energy at 2 to win. All of these are to win the event, which, while they're now playing the grand finals at the minors anymore, which is a change that came in only for this cycle for the first time. Before, we actually saw the grand finals happening, and that's a good change, which is slightly off topic. But yeah, these are odds for the teams winning the tournament, which means them going through the upper bracket to the grand final, basically.
Yep.
Where they get the first seed, while the team that goes through the lower bracket gets the lower seed, like the second seed for those minors. So you can see that Energy, Renegades, Avant-Garde, Mousesports are the favorites, which is, the CIS one is probably the one that we could talk about just because of Avant-Garde and Gambit. I don't know about you guys.
Gambit, like,
and the
continued...
Winstrike side of things.
Yeah, Winstrike. I don't know about that team.
Winstrike. Winstrike is kind of like Winstrike has been a meme for a year. Ever since they had that run against QBF, they've just been a massive meme.
This isn't like the new lineup with Wayland.
This is a very different lineup.
I know it's a different lineup.
Very different lineup.
And Norbert, who's like grinding FPL or something.
Yeah. But have they really done anything since then? Like, I've followed every now and again, just looked at what they've done.
They did a huge thing. Like, how do you not know about it?
Okay.
Like the last Christmas cover.
The last Christmas what?
Oh, that's true.
You must have seen it.
That was insane.
Incredibly awkward.
I know what you're talking about.
That was insane.
I cringed the entire time. You would have it on repeat.
Yeah, but like Avant-Garde, I feel like Gambit is like a good shout, but still they've been weird. Weird is very weird. And they still don't have an in-game leader. They're still doing this like... I think Mo is calling now, so that's also a thing. Whatever. Avant-Garde is at least... They've been up and down, but they have a good peaks, definitely. And they could do some damage here. I feel like they should... Also, Spirit is not that bad. Other than that, there's this runtime GG veteran Starrick Swooch seized team, which I don't know.
Surprised they didn't get Overdrive in there.
Overdrive. I mean, if they didn't get the sponsor, probably they would put him in.
Yeah, he's been basically that. Like, whenever a team didn't have a sponsor, or whenever Overdrive wanted to travel somewhere, he just got a team together and paid for it.
That was
pretty much
an interesting time to be alive.
Actually,
he won the tournament, man.
Why not?
Yeah, he won the Czech Prague challenge.
The one that I was the main admin there.
I actually
fucking won a tournament.
Looking at the odds for NRG to take it, like, considering their competition, that is real juicy. Like, who is even a threat to NRG at that the American minor?
Literally themselves. They're playing against themselves.
Yeah.
There.
No one should come close to them at all.
I guess you can look at United as a team that has been somewhat on the up lately, but and I think they're like the third.
Come on. That's a stretch.
I'm not saying.
Did
they're gonna
play anything with
like,
Cooper?
Huh?
Did they even play anything? Yeah, they did. They started playing with him. Finally.
These guys have had more roster changes than I've been checked for STDs. It's ridiculous. Every second day, it's E United in the news.
Yeah, that's
like
fair
they're
enough.
changing rosters all the time. Like, how much practice could you possibly have? The fate of the team, they don't know who's in, they don't know who's out. What a terrible working life that must be. And then you look at some of these other names. It's dominated by South America, which I don't think is a bad thing at all. We all know it's a very strong region. But the fact is, I think that the South American region has a lot of different individuals who are star players or potentially good players in rosters where they shouldn't be, right? Like, I think that there's people in the wrong places, and that's something which I don't know how to fix it. I don't know what the scene is like internally down there. I think that's a problem for them not having a contender at this event. And then Envy with Karrigan.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Okay, cool.
I mean, that's just like
cool.
They don't have
that's all I
firepower.
can say.
They have no firepower, like none. They have Nifty maybe, who can like have pretty good peaks, and that's pretty much it. I swear to God, I don't understand this move. Like, sure, I can understand it from Karrigan's point of view, just like, fuck it, let's go to NA, let's just wreck some noobs, whatever his thinking there might be. Just like teach NACS. But
I can see what he's doing here. He's going into Envy, everyone's gonna be like, Karrigan's gonna game lead us, he's gonna be sick, he has all the respect. He comes in and like sets himself up to like stat pad, like there's just stat pad all the time. Have good stats from like one event, and he's like, look at me, good fragging in-game leader, pick me up, someone.
yeah,
please
just like
save
bulking
me
up
from
his
this.
resume for his next team, sure.
It's some money for him to chill on for a little while, because that MV lineup was doing nothing from the start. I had to do the whole of NA Pro League watching that rubbish. How they even had a spot.
I mean, just look at the lineup. It's just like you have JDM, who has just been fairly underwhelming, even since like not even towards the end of it. Liquid, it was
Even
just,
when
like,
when they made like the major final, it was like nothing special right there.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
he wasn't like an insane player. So literally,
Yeah,
when you
he's been
think about
falling off
good
since, like, 2 years
JDM,
ago.
you have to go to CLG, and that was 2015.
Yeah.
Rolling
it's kinda
back
insane
the
that he's-
years to when I beat Titan
Oh, here we go.
at
Yeah,
ESL 1 Cologne. Anyway,
He's always able to get this in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's
So
been-
yeah, I think this NRG, this is so clear cut. Should be clear cut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, especially when
Like-
even when you look at INTZ and them, like, as far
Not
as we know,
having
losing
Phelps
Phelps as well.
Yeah.
So that's another team that's probably not going to come in at their best level. So that's the I'm like, okay, just shortly going back to MIBR. I'm surprised IMTZ didn't just like fuck up somehow and didn't actually reveal this for like a long time ago.
Yeah. Like, we signed this player, but for who?
But yeah,
we don't know.
yeah,
maybe it's Phelps,
yeah, exactly,
maybe it's KNG, maybe it's someone else.
Unless it's all just like a fucking like, and Phelps actually stayed, and then and MIBR is actually getting somebody else and
Playing
like,
with Tarek.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be funny.
it
Yeah,
would
Yeah,
be
if they
nice.
stick with Tarek, it would be funny.
It would be nice as well if KNG just goes to Luminosity now and replaces Neckers. Like, that for me would just, I would
Go
love
back,
that.
make
I
this
would love
cold,
it.
old lineup.
Let's
That would
do
be
it.
good.
Let's just roll. But with these odds on screen, I think the NRG one is pretty juicy. I think the Renegades one is about right, all things considered. Mouse Sports are going to have to go through the fucking gauntlet of a
Yes.
tournament. So those odds, I think they're good odds, but that's an event that
No
if you
guarantees.
genuinely think you can predict that, you can have my job. So just go for it. And Avantgarde,
Yeah,
who
there's
knows about
no way.
CIS? CIS region is like throwing darts at a dartboard while blindfolded and trying to hit the bullseye. It's just impossible. No one knows.
I think
Without the blindfold, if you're me, because I'm retarded and can't throw, so more or less the same.
Fair enough.
on that EU minor though, who would you guys just go on and give us the prediction on it? Because I'm so baffled by it. Like Optic North, you're going to do fuck
I mean,
all as per
Mouse Sports are the
usual.
obvious first one, right? Like nobody in their right mind would pick against Mouse Sports at this tournament,
Yeah.
even against this competition. But like the second one could be literally anybody.
Let's go.
Could be like
Ends.
Vitality potentially. Like if I mean,
Yeah.
I
Ends.
kind of want it to be Vitality just because
Yes,
I want
yes.
to I really want to see them make the next step and just like get into that level where they actually start getting some invites. Because so far they've just had to qualify for things aside. I mean, even for that
Everything,
DreamHack
yeah.
tournament, right? They had to qualify, as far as I remember. So it's like whatever they get, I just want them to get into that like top 20-ish teams where they actually get some invites and start showing up a little bit more, and just let's see what Zoo can do. Fuck
Yeah.
it.
Yes.
With that ends point you're
I just want to
making-
see this Ents lineup
Yeah.
go, man. I want to. To me, it's like they've been grinding out the whole time right. They've got a good system. They play Counter-Strike the way it should be played. Like, I can't really fault how ENCE operate as a team. They've got good backing. Twister is super underrated as a coach.
There seem to be mental issues there, though.
Yes.
Like, they have some, I don't know, like, they've had so many matches where they just had a massive lead and they just kept either almost dropped it or actually dropped it and stuff like that. There just seems like there still has some growing up to do in that team. So I'm not entirely sold on them, but you're right in everything you're saying. Like their style of CS is very very good. I like it. I like how they're playing, and I like the approach that they take. But it's just like they still have some growing up to do before they actually become one of those teams.
I think their problem is they need one of the players in the team to cement themselves as the closer, and that should technically be Alu, just based off his experience.
Yeah.
But maybe they need. So let's just live in a world. Obviously, this is me theory crafting outside of the realms of this tournament right here. Let's say you can debate this if you want. It's obviously a big, but I from what I've watched, I would probably, if I had the choice, I would replace X7 with Sunny. If I had the choice, if Sunny was leaving Mouse Sports and if this is all possible, and then Sunny would be your closer, I think, and then this team would be like they should be sick because the foundation that they've built is really good. The organization has done a really good job, so that's why I agree in the sentiment that they would be good to see them progress. But I think in terms of if they go toe to toe in that loser bracket against like a Vitality or whatever, Vitality just have them covered for days and experience, right? Like this is where you just see like Apex and MBK rock up and just drop 30s. Like that's when they just like roll back the years, right?
They put the pressure on. They're like, hey.
Yeah. I think Mouse Sports are the clear favorite, as we've all agreed on. You touched on the fact that North and Optic, they're very sporadic. We don't know which version of those teams to get. Space Soldiers, unfortunately, losing their star player. It's just difficult to see them.
I definitely see Space Soldiers as like the and Valiance, I guess. Like as those two teams that like have no chance, I feel like.
I think Windigo actually has a chance for some unknown reason. I don't know why. I just really liked what I saw from like Poison and Ships online. I know that doesn't count for anything, but I watched those guys play and I was like, yeah, they're pretty sick. Obviously, translating it to LAN is pretty hard. So if you were to go the top three for that, it'd be Mouse Sports, ENCE, and Vitality for sure, right?
Yeah, I would agree. Like it depends on those Danish guys, so because those can definitely shake things up, and they definitely should be like among that top, like at least in that like top 4 discussion. But they just like we've just seen Optic fuck up for the longest time, and we've always been saying that they had the players to do so, or like to actually be a solid team, but they've never actually lived up to it. Now that they got refreshed, is anything going to change? Who knows?
That was a totally weird roster move for me, by the way. I don't understand it.
Roll them 2 lineups and create one from it, because both of them are dog shit. Like, it bothers me so much. There's so much wasted potential between 2 lineups, and I'm fed up of seeing them just fail flat every single time.
I mean, we might still end up talking about the EU minor on the next show, depending on how everything works up. So
just brushing off.
But I can just touch on the roster while we were on it. Like, Snappy just brought in Nico. He's like, this is my guy. I love him. He's going to do all these roles that we needed to cover the spots. And then 2 months later, okay, I got refresh. This guy's out, kicking him. Like, what's going on there? That's so weird. And I'm not even like calling him out, like being like bullshitting. I feel like there is something else there that made that happen. I don't think it's just his Snappy bullshitting and getting a better player because he can.
Yeah.
Seems.
But I thought about it from Nico's perspective. Like he's been thrown around like the town bicycle.
Yeah.
Like it was like north to it was heroic to north to Optic to nowhere in the space of 6 months. That's a rough one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right.
I agree.
We're done
Tough
with the
luck.
GG bet of the week. That's coming in from all of the minors. That's what us guys thought of all of it. And next one, this is the topic that you guys have semi-touched on throughout.
We've just been touching up on this for like the last topics. Basically.
Is there anyone who can catch Astralis? And if so, how the fuck are they going to do it? Because no one looks even close, and 2019 could possibly just be another year of Astralis dominance, and maybe they even grab another Intel Grand Slam for the fun of it.
Who's going to give the cliche?
Like what?
Who's gonna hit us with the Astralis' biggest enemy is themselves. They can't get complacent, guys.
They clearly are not going to do that. Like they
I
clearly
mean,
have
they've already
mindset
passed
not
that
to do it.
point, which is annoying.
They've been,
But-
exactly. They've been like half a year past that point at least. So that's the thing. We can't even use that cliche. Like, sure, they can fall off individually, and that's, I think, the only thing that can actually take down Astralis in 2019.
But
Unless
that
you
is
see
being
more
complacent. Like, how do you fall off individually? I mean, people
can
have been
just-
saying,
you
"Oh,
can't,
I
like-
fell off," but it doesn't happen magically.
No, I mean players just lose some form. Like they fuck up a couple of matches and it gets into their head. And not even Astralis are immune to that. Like they just like it can happen to some players. So like it's probably not going to happen like to the stars. But I mean like Magisk is not
For
like,
me. That final, Astralis, Liquid, and Device starts off has like a fairly bad first map. The last one they played, that was Pro League for the Grand Slam. Number one, it's Denmark. They didn't win like a big tournament in Denmark. It's the final for the Grand Slam, so it's like added pressure for them. And Device starts bad, and then the second map he plays like awful. Even drops the op. Glaive picks up the op. Glaive gets like a 3k with the op.
Yeah.
Device finishes the map like fairly bad, and after that he comes back and just like plays very well. He gets that MVP, right?
no, I mean
Still-
they've definitely like
If
proved
he
that they
can go
do
through
it
that,
within-
like even him being like the player everyone used to say like choke Vice, whatever the fuck. So if he can go through all of that, I think he pretty much absolved not getting tilted or getting, I don't know, put off by a couple of bad games, in my opinion.
I don't think that there is a single team in their current form, without having seen after the new roster changes, who can beat Astralis consistently. Do I think that teams can beat Astralis? Definitely. And those win conditions would be this current Na'Vi roster with everybody in the team besides Simple and Electronic. So that's Flamey, Edward, and Zeus, all playing to 95 to 100% of their capacity, while Simple Electronic just phone in a normal day at work like they would. And they have to make sure that they genuinely practice Cache and bin nuke. And that's not because I don't think Na'Vi are a decent nuke team. I think that they do have some good results and some players who are good. I just think that you should, for the time being anyway, allow Astralis to become complacent on nuke, right? Let everybody think, oh, we're so scared of nuke, and then eventually go back to it when they haven't had a chance to play it on the high level all the time, right? Because no matter what you say, if you're coming for their throat on a different map from time to time, obviously it would require certain circumstances for them not to be banning that map. But you have to consider a different approach. So I think Na'Vi, that would be their win conditions. Liquid, it needs to gel in the sense that I mentioned earlier in the piece, where for these guys, everybody needs to give up a little bit of ground, very marginable, to slot Stewie in with the personnel or the fragging upgrade to come on in, and them to somehow be a very mature squad under the coaching role of someone who hasn't coached before. So that one becomes less and less viable. I think MIBR are a team who are going to have to maybe restructure their approach to the game, and they're like a longer project over the entire year, because their style of Counter-Strike was very mid-round based and people making very good mid-round decisions. They're going to have to become the full package because Counter-Strike's changed, and then FaZe literally just brawl, just make every round a force buy. Just fuck them. Just go, you want to play? Like, never allow Astralis to build an economy and make sure that all of your players are playing close to 100%, like individually, not necessarily within their team. Those would be the criteria for those. I don't see any other team at the moment with even a chance of beating Astralis. Like, no offense to Mouse Sports or NIP are in there at number 6, NRG, Fnatic, these kind of guys to round up the top 10. I don't see them having... It's impossible for them to hold a candle to Astralis, in my mind.
Not consistently in Monsport's case, for sure. I felt like towards the end of the year, I felt like it maybe could have happened on the back of a nuke win, just because we saw them get close that couple of times, right? They had both times they had like a 12-8 lead, and they dropped it or something along those lines. They just were in a winning position and still lost the nuke. So on the back of those, like I felt like they could have actually taken down Astralis, but just consistently, it's probably not going to happen. Yeah, I agree with that. In terms of FaZe, it's just like FaZe are not going to beat them consistently either. They might have one of those momentum wins that you were talking about, that they just like get rolling and never stop, like some of those games that FaZe have been known for. But for me, I actually feel like MIBR, just based on what we saw last year and based on how they approached those matchups against Astralis, and they actually got close a couple of times, very, very close. Like those Blast and what was the other ECS, was it? where they got
Yes.
the close the second
Yes.
time. So those two tournaments
They
kind of actually made me believe they could do
in
it.
the group stage, right?
I'm sorry?
I think I'm lagging out a bit. I think
Yeah,
they
they
beat them in
did,
the group
yeah.
stage.
Yeah, just like kind of arrived in my brain late, but it also lagged out, yeah. But yeah, just based on fall and kind of understanding the matchup, I felt like they could be the one that could actually take them down a little bit more consistently than the others. But I still don't think anybody can take down Astralis over the course of the whole year. Like, I think Astralis are still going to be the most dominant team of next year. Maybe not as much as now, just because of like teams actually just focusing on or just creating lineups just to beat Astralis and stuff like that, and just like figuring out ways how to beat just Astralis and just focusing so much on that I just don't see Astralis just keeping up this level of domination that they've shown especially over the past couple of months, but just over the whole of 2018, basically.
I think one of the things that, as you said, will at least make Astralis not as dominant as last year is that people are going to start skipping events. I feel like everyone's been, even at the top 20 articles we've been doing with like Automatic, with the Mouse Sports guys, the FaZe guys, everyone is saying like, we're going to have to skip events because at one point they came to a point that they were playing like okay, and then they started playing like shit. Even Liquid did it last year when they went to like Cologne, Belo Horizonte, Star Series in like 3 weeks. Cloud9 did it early before their roster fell apart. Probably helped their roster fall apart because they did like 5 events in 2 months.
Look,
or
like
even more.
Fucking Liquid attended 20 tournaments, I think it was last year, and that was with the first like 4 months being fairly easy. Like that was like 1, maximum 2 with like Summit tournaments in a month, while like they racked it up from like June up to like November. They racked up something like 13 tournaments in like the span of 7 months.
Yeah,
which is just crazy. Like that's something that they're gonna have to stop for sure. And that's just not just Liquid. MIBR did basically the same thing. I think they had a very similar amount of tournaments. They also went to like a bunch of those lower ones.
Mouse Sports as well did like
Mouse
every
Sports did a lot of
available.
them as well. So yeah, I agree with that for sure. Like teams have been going to way too many events, and especially like some of those smaller ones. Like those teams are definitely not going to go to the Summit. Well, Liquid are not going to go to like a tournament like a Summit. Again, I feel like they used it last year as like the opportunity to get a win, especially like Supernova, obviously, because Summit was the first one that they actually won ever. But still, like those teams are just going to start skipping those small tournaments for sure, and even some of the bigger ones.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think it's a necessary thing now because it's not just affecting them on terms of like a travel basis, but it's the mental health of these players. Like this is a high pressure set of games. It's constant that we're seeing them on the road traveling. It's not easy traveling that much at all.
And just the energy just goes down.
It's the smartest thing Astralis did.
Yeah. It's just like you have to learn how to reserve your energy, when to peak, and things like that, what to focus on and stuff. Astralis were ahead of the curve, and now more teams are going to follow for sure.
On the other hand, I feel like a few teams will fall into the pitfall of doing it, and then when they show up for the event, they will do badly, and their ranking will go down, and then they'll fall out of the classic invite loop that happens for these teams. Because it's not just about skipping events; it's when you skip event to actually use the time well and not just like not go to event on its own. It doesn't really help you. So you need to do it properly, otherwise you'll get kind of in a bad position.
I mean, I don't think that's going to happen to like those elite teams that we were talking about. The rest, I don't think travels to as many events, even close to that. I think like when you go down to like number 10 and things like, and those teams like they maybe attend like between 10 and 15 tournaments or something, which is like say 1 a month or a little bit over maybe, which is pretty reasonable. I feel like up to 15 events is kind of sustainable, and anything above that is not. But like you don't see that many teams doing it. You see basically like the top 5, all of them have shitloads of events. Maybe even Astralis have quite a lot, even after skipping. I think they had 17 tournaments they had, and that's still a lot. They didn't skip all that much. They skipped like Belo Horizonte and then like another tournament around that time. Yeah. New York, yeah, that's it. And they like aside from that, like sure they did skip a little bit, but not an overwhelming amount. I feel like they're just gonna do it more next year.
I think the situation, this is kind of bleeding into our next topic, which is kind of cool. I think the situation for a lot of teams obviously not having the choice if your organization forces you to do things kind of sucks in a way. But
yeah, that's bad.
yeah, it's not ideal. There's a lot of things that go on that you know, is not great. But
sending your team mails to every event.
they love it, I guess, right? I guess, you know, you want as much exposure as humanly possible, and I understand that from a business perspective. But if you want to get the most out of your team and you want them to be performing to the best, then I think the thing is the biggest goal, and this is the way it always used to be, was to make top 8 at a major so that you could retain that status, and that almost is enough to buoy you for the entire year to get you invited to certain events, right? I think that with the ESL stuff that's been announced for the new Pro League season, I think that might change a couple of things for some teams. I actually personally liked probably one of the only people in the world who liked online leagues, because I thought that it gave players a chance to be more at home. Obviously, it's not an ideal to travel and then have to play that same day or the next day. That really sucks. But to know that you have a week of matches from home and you can actually spend a week at home, I thought would have been a pretty cool thing for them. But obviously, too many people on the internet complained. So we changed things.
I think it depends on the team. Like, I was actually talking to G2 at the major, particularly NIAC, and I was asking them if like they feel like if they actually were a part of the Pro League, or if they had the lineup at Pro League, whether it would have helped them in preparing for the major and stuff, because they literally just came into that with fairly little official matches to back it up, to like test things out. And that just didn't. Obviously, it didn't work in the end. So for those teams, for like those lower tier teams, that those online leagues, I feel like were very good. And for those top teams who just play online all the time anyway, it was just the hindrance. Like for anybody who wanted to get higher, it was a good thing. For anybody who didn't really care, that just obviously wasn't.
Did we lose him?
I don't know.
Kind of cut off. Got it cut off.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
I lost that last bit.
But I agree. I don't know what you said, but I agree.
No, it's just that like one of those the lower teams are definitely going to welcome those online leagues, just because of the opportunity to go to a bigger LAN and just actually like test new things. That was another thing that's just good about online CS, is that just like new lineups can test things out, and that's pretty much it. Like it's obviously, but it's part of the problem, right? It's also means that what?
No, this is just a comment in chat. No.
Okay, it also means that you don't take like that you have the freedom to test new things in online season. That also means that you don't really care about it, right? You don't really care about the results. So that's like a double-edged sword there.
Agreed. By the way, Hellraisers played 15 events last year. So it's not.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's not
smaller events, shorter maybe, but a lot of them pretty big. So still, just putting it out there.
Swings and roundabouts in there. Swings and roundabouts. All right, predictions for 2019, and this can kind of be like open-ended. What are our thoughts on going forward for it? I'd love to see Golden get back on a Swedish lineup, preferably not Fnatic, so we can come back and just rape him after what they did to him.
I mean, generally, I just want to see Golden come back, right? Because who knows what the hell's going on with him. But that's one of those things.
Yes.
So, I mean, Chad,
you
you wanted to get this topic, so let's go. Did you have something in mind?
I was just thinking we could maybe just pick a couple of things, and we could go back and see where we are in 6 months' time, for example. I think that if Vitality do well here, it could be a bit of a resurgence for them, because the gauntlet that they've had to go through just to get to this point is kind of reminiscent to me of probably what it felt like for the Ninjas in Pajamas to go through the doldrums just to get back to a major. For these guys, it's been an even longer journey. So I think that is, with the way that Zawu kid plays Counter-Strike, I think this is a chance for French Counter-Strike to have a little bit of a resurgence, but we know how heavy that is personality-wise. I agree with the sentiment you guys are echoing about teams skipping more events. I would also like to hope that this is more of a hope as opposed to a prediction. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I think that it'd be nice to see more teams having the coaches with more authority. And I'm trying to think what else would be a nice one out there for everybody at home. Give me a minute while I mull over some thoughts.
Sure.
Who's next?
My prediction is that this Fnatic lineup is going to be decent. I don't know how decent, but let's say they reach like top 8 at the main. No, that's pretty too random. Let's say that they'll reach like a top 6 level consistently this year. That's just my feeling. I feel like it has some potential there.
I mean, we saw it in Chicago. Like, I was pretty surprised by how well Brolin played. That was basically his first big event, and he just fucking, like, that was so surprising to me. He
was
brought
confident.
it to
He played his
Chicago
game.
for sure.
Yeah.
Like, he was on the cusp of even getting like an EVP there as well. That's surprising for a young player like that, especially like inexperienced as fuck. That was impressive. But yeah, for
You gotta love
me,
him as well,
I mean,
right? The rest of the team throw him under the bus as well. Throw him down for every interview, every little bit of like piece to be thrown in there, and he just has to be like, "Yep, okay, I'll do it," and I'll give as little answers as possible, and I'll still just beast it on the server and let my stats speak for themselves.
I mean, like my prediction is it's going to be a snooze fest, and it's something that we've already kind of talked about here, and it's that Astralis are just going to stay at number 1. Exactly. I think somebody's going to take them down for a while, like throughout the year at some point. Though, like, I think they're not going to be like, they're not actually going to stay at number 1 for the entire 365 days. I think somebody will actually take them down for a couple of weeks, and they're actually going to have a little bit more competition just because of how much focus there will be on them throughout the year. Like after 2018, I don't see everybody who's anywhere close to getting to that level to like contesting for number 1, not looking at them super in depth and trying to figure out how the fuck do we beat that. So I just think that's going to happen. Like, they're going to stay at number 1, but not going to be as dominant.
I think that Flusher and Keo and obviously presumably Golden will go back to Europe. I don't think they will be in North America for too long.
I think they might keep like one guy.
Maybe, but like, dude, who the fuck wants to live in North America when you can live in Sweden? What, mate? I lived in downtown Las Vegas.
I know, that was the worst part. You were there for a long time, man. Like, for how long were you there? For like
Don't tell the American government, but I was there for a long time, illegally. Anyway, no, it wasn't illegal. We didn't break any laws. But
all good guys. But like, living in LA is probably better than living in Sweden,
beautiful.
just because it's cold. So that's
but
they're from Sweden, so they're probably yeah, that's the classic. My prediction is that this Stantaris big thing won't work out at all, and they'll go back to someone else. Doesn't matter who. I mean, they'll have him until next recovers, and then maybe add Sursen in or some other German talent that pops up in the meantime. But I don't think it will.
Does anyone know how good his English has gotten as well? Because like, it was never fantastic. So has it got any better? Yeah, that's just never going to work. They're just about struggling with our whole English to German thing at times where Smoothie gets pushed aside. You're trying to add someone that just about speaks English to the roster. I'm a fan of those good dudes, but that shit doesn't work unless he's just there to literally just be a fucking turret that just mows down anything in front of him and just gives the basic calls. Then
that doesn't work in CS. Like that never.
No. But I mean that's the only option he's got, right? If he can't communicate, he's just gonna have to literally dome heads.
Especially on a team like this that is like mega based on tactics, on gameplay, on having strategies, on having like just like not being a fragging out team. Now you put in someone that's fragging out. That will help the fragging part, but it will really ruin everything else. So I don't see how this is. I don't like. No one is saying anything bad about this move. I don't understand why. So that's my 6 months.
Communication's the problem. I think after the major it'll be a telling sign. Obviously they got the E-League invite as well, so let's see how that can go. That's about it really. My prediction is just I reckon Ents are going to bust into like the top 8 potentially. I think they're going to be still on a rampage. Why are we laughing now?
Just looking at the chat.
Lucas from HLTV he said it's okay.
Gobians on terrorists can speak Turkish. Then Gobi translate to German, and Tizzy and Taps repeat in English for Smoothie.
Exactly.
Oh God. God help us.
It's like mini
Tyloo. That is your only way to make that work. That is never going to happen. That's worse than Tyloo, because at least in Tyloo's world, someone was typing while talking at the same time. Jesus Christ.
That's like, by the way, that's a fucking level of multitasking that I never got to master.
Yeah.
Like, how the fuck do you do that? How the fuck do you actually
Literally
focus on typing and speaking at the same time?
But in two languages.
Tyloo,
Yeah, exactly.
Tyloo at
Two
the
languages.
Europe. No, it was at the Asia Minor when we were in Korea, and I'm literally watching this go down. Peacemaker's calling the fucking call outs, and Bentet's taking all of it in, and he's like, okay. And he's literally talking and typing it all down so that Bondit can get the information in English and the rest of them can get it in Chinese. And I'm sat there going, what the fuck is going on? This is that's what they called so many goddamn like that shit's never going to work, ever. There's
No, of course not.
no hope. No hope.
No.
The communication
CS
is so key in Counter-Strike.
Yeah, exactly. Like you see, I mean, I'm just gonna take a massive detour here, but yeah, like you see, like some of these like Korean/Chinese teams in League of Legends and shit, but like in CS is it's never gonna work. It's too many things you have to
my
call
prediction,
out, too detailed, and everything like that. So yeah,
Where's
my
that
prediction is Ents, boys. Easy for Ents. They're going forward. I want to see them hit that like top 10, top 8. I see good things happening for that team. I think Sponge, you mentioned it about potentially Sunny gets to join that roster. That would be amazing, but that would mean like Mouse Sports would have to like massively fall off, I guess, for that to kind of take place.
And then would also
God,
have
he's
to
had a
come up
phenomenal
with
end of the year.
like a big check.
I don't think
like,
I think they do it for Sunny though, or he just waits for his contract to die.
But I don't think
there is an option there.
Do they have that
there would
one?
have to be an initiation.
There
would have to have something happen with Mouse Sports. I don't think Sunny would just
They've
stop and leave.
got some money. They've got money they needed to get Sunny. I know that wouldn't be a problem, but I know for a fact that it would mean Mouse Sports would have to drop off insanely. But even then, without Sunny, I think they can do so well.
I mean, I know that. I mean, even in this top 20, Sunny said that he wasn't really happy in like this year, especially towards the end of the year. A lot of issues inside the team, motivation, emotional, whatever. It's not like bickering. It's just like people not playing the game and stuff like that. So if that continues, maybe Ents go to like a top 8 team, whatever, have a few good results. Then that obviously Mouse fall off, then they're at the same level, then why not go back to the good old Finns? Could happen. I'm not saying that this will happen.
Is that a prediction?
No,
exactly.
No, it's not a prediction. My prediction is that the Katowice major will be the best major we had yet.
Okay, so what about like...
Is this like the Olympics?
Huh?
That's what the guy who goes is a joke. Because like the guy goes to the Olympics every time he goes, "This is the best Olympics ever."
I have never.
Olympics in 2018. No one watches, bro. Are you a dinosaur?
It's basically porn for pussies.
What?
Wow.
Okay.
I don't know how we made that one work, but look.
What? Where did we go with this? How did we get here, Striker? How did this become a thing?
I don't know.
What?
No, just because we've hit 10 o'clock, it doesn't mean the stream automatically turns off.
Yeah, he's like, okay, time's over. I can say what I
Can you please explain this? I have no idea what.
Yeah, you need to.
No, I'm not going to explain it.
No, this that's an explanation. You can't leave this. I will keep this shit running.
It's like sports.
You weirdo.
The thing is, like, if I explain it, people will jump on it and say it's sexist. So I'm not gonna, like, let's forget that.
Now they can just like automatically know it is sexist without even knowing what it means.
Isn't, but I can't explain it that it sounds that it isn't. So that's the problem with it. Like,
next time you ever have one of those thoughts, and then you want to speak your way out of it, what I'd recommend saying is, it's something in my culture, it won't translate. Let's just run with that, because we keep everybody safe. My favorite one, I just walk away. So we can't do that right now, unfortunately.
Yeah, you're kind of stuck here. I do want to find out what this is and where we're going. Any other predictions, lads, before we wrap this up, because it's going down.
What I was going to say was, where will Karrigan end up? I'm just curious about that. What the fuck?
If what Banks is saying is like, well, let's be honest, right? If Karrigan, when the pieces of the puzzle, he gets a chance to actually play with them, he would much prefer, I would assume, to live in Denmark as well.
Yeah, for sure.
And then if you are him and you get the choice, let's say Optic comes to you, or let's say North comes to you, and they say, hey, you're going to be the daddy. You can pick from these teams. You can pick from any Danish team you want, and obviously besides Astralis, and you can have all the pieces of the puzzle. you'd be doing it, right? Like you'd be picking up Valde, you'd be able to form a pretty good team around you to be competitive, right? That at least that's what I would be aiming to do long term if I was him.
Yeah, he has like a bunch of options. Even Mouse Sports might be an option down the line. Cloud9 is obviously an option if Golden like doesn't, or even if Golden is fit, I would see Karrigan is an option there. And of course, like the two Danish teams. So a lot of good possibilities. He'll be back on a team. If that's a prediction, he'll be back on a team by like June for sure.
It's going to be earlier than that even. Like he's basically to pin down for NV for, I mean, you have to look at the buyout, I guess, and it's probably going to be pretty high in FaZe.
When did he sign?
And he is a pretty big commodity, so that's another problem. So he's probably going to be pretty expensive.
It depends. Like maybe his contract isn't that long.
Oh yeah, that's true. He's been there for what? This is like 2 years, a 2-year point, like a little bit over.
He joined.
He joined late 2016.
Yes, so it's over 2 years.
So it's a little bit over 2 years. So I mean, either he's got like a new contract now, or he had like a 3-year. Who knows? I don't know. But yeah, it's he's not going to be a cheap player to buy out for sure. But I mean, if it's one of those Danish teams, they're going to have the money for it.
Yeah, I presume he'll just walk after the major, maybe though, because even if at the last major he was like cucked by Nico, so I don't think he would be signing a new contract for like 2 years or something. Probably just extended for this major or something like that.
Could be. I don't
know. Just very speculative at this point, though.
Well, I mean, okay. Yeah.
Let's do some big balls predictions.
From me?
One at least. Yeah.
Big balls predictions.
Fuck. Working with you. Look, I think Greyhound are going to be the best team in Oceania consistently throughout 2019. So
I wouldn't even bet on that, though.
Look, you wanted a big prediction. I'm bringing you the biggest. I don't know. I think it's hard to make a big one. I think if we look at least within the next couple of months of what we know what's coming up, I can't see a world where the CIS teams don't upset and really just ruin the brackets for everybody like normal. That's going to happen again. Taz is going to be in the best Polish team.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, actually,
isn't he already?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Let me check the rankings.
Like, yeah,
I'm about to say, who else is there?
It's not a big win, but
I mean, like the new Virtus Pro lineup has potential, so that team could be better than his team, or he could join that team.
So okay, like, James, you wanted to talk about the Polish scene, right? So what about some of those predictions?
This was my. I'm just interested. I don't know if it's a prediction, is it? But I just want to see where this whole Neo Morels lineup, trying out these other young guns, and Innocent obviously leaving his team and giving himself a shot on this. Like we have no idea where it's going to go. Right? They're basically just a mixed team, but it's all like the testing ground. And I like where this Polish scene's going, at least, because we've split up the whole set of like the experienced players with the skill, with the experience, and we're finally, after God knows how long, able to actually divide it up a little bit here, right? That gives the scene a bit of a chance to grow beyond what they've been stuck behind for so long. And I was a big fan of Virtus Pro, right? It became good fun until it was too much of a meme, and now
everyone was a fan of Virtus Pro.
It's all shifted.
Yeah. I mean, I'm from 2018. Like not my biggest regret, but I guess the biggest regret would be just the fuck up of AGO, or one of the biggest from when it comes to the lower tier scene. Because like the VP just basically still snatchy, and just that obviously didn't turn into anything. And now they also lost Toa, so it's just like that team has just gone to shit.
I mean, Toa was on the bench
of other
already,
teams.
So
like I would be okay with that if that actually worked. Like if VP actually went on to bigger things after that, but like he's just been stuck there, and like a big talent that has just gone to nothing so far. I mean, obviously with this new lineup it could change. Who knows? But so far it has really, really not worked out.
Talking about this like Innocent, what do you say, Neo, Morels lineup.
Morels,
like, Neo going and playing with some younger players on paper kind of sounds good, but going back to like an hour and a half ago to Chad saying how all these young players have just like leapfrogged the old ones and the veterans and all of that stuff, I feel like that is going to happen with with like Neo and these guys. It's like they
he just has the IGL.
Yeah, but still, I feel like it's just too late. It's just too late to make that jump. Like he was clinging on to like that high point of Virtus Pro for so long. Now he fell off. He's just gonna fall off down into the Pronax, like what Pronax did essentially. Like he fell from Fnatic to like
not that bad.
Digital
hopefully.
chaos, and then he couldn't make any qualifiers, and then no one cares anymore. Hopefully not, because Neo, cool guy. Oof. But still, that's my feeling.
Even if Neo's a cool guy, I think on paper he has more to offer than what you're giving him credit for there. I would just personally say he has a little more than that.
The problem is they have to go and relearn how Counter-Strike is played now. I know that sounds like such a grotesque thing to say, but I mean in like the movement and the
movement, get yourself
all
up to date.
The little details, right? But the problem is it's no longer about whether we think the potential is there. It's does he think he still has that? Do all of these guys who are now in that position think that they have that? Because they are going to need to do a lot of work to get back to that level, and it's not something which should be taken like lightly anymore. It would be cool if, you know, a team was clearly lacking a veteran, right, and needed somebody who was like that closer I was talking about, or that somebody to come in and be like, oh no, like, you know, this is how we deal with these situations. But it's not like that. It's the building blocks from the ground up, and unfortunately, that's not an easy place for anybody to be, because you are going to have to now micromanage every part of the situation while trying to return yourself to form. If you were coming in as just a supplementary piece, then you could do a lot more focus on yourself. But when you now need to build something from the beginning, there's so much more work, and it's just a task which I don't think is possible, and I would love to be proven wrong. But it's the same. It's the same with a lot of players, actually. You could say it about a lot of players. It's just whether they still have that will, and that's another one of those things that it's not tangible for us. We can only be speculative about it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find like the team that this Polish lineup lost to in the qualifier they played the other day. I can't find the bracket, but it was...
Look, I'm just saying, if it's not on HLTV.org, it don't matter.
It was Arctic, the Spanish Arctic. Who knows about them? No one.
Yeah, I have no
that's all I'm trying to say. Even though it's obviously mixed, they're just mega fresh. Literally just played their first game, but they're losing to people you've never heard of. So that's just like the cutthroat scene of CS at the moment. It's pretty rough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Does that bring us to the end of this crazy evening of discussion, boys? Are you guys all clear on your predictions for 2019? Any final words? Anything else you want to break down?
I think I'm done.
I would say so too.
Hey.
Unless somebody wants, the previous season saw us like at the end always take some questions from the chat if we wanted, if we could have, or
all right.
If somebody sees something that's vaguely interesting, we can touch on that. If not, you can close it out. Depends.
We can just say who the number one player
Twitch
of top
chat.
20 is. That makes sense.
Oh god! Don't start
of next year, you mean?
Yeah. Twitch chat. Fire away at us.
No, I mean just for this year.
Stupid questions. Give us something to work with.
Yeah, you kind of have to wait.
I mean, yeah, there was a bunch of good questions, but we didn't keep track. So,
well, let's try to get some questions now. Then that aren't just.
Let's try to get one decent question.
Yeah, come on, guys. Twitch chat. I believe in you. You can do something viable with questions.
We already kind of touched on Vitality.
International lineups for this year. Yeah, we did. We did Vitality earlier in the show. You can check out the VOD. It will be up on HLTV.
Do you know
probably tomorrow.
Where is Flipside?
Who cares?
Exactly. Flipside have been gone for so fucking.
Where is Markelov?
Yeah.
I think
Flipside
Markelov
no longer making money.
Isn't Markelov the remaining player on the Flipside lineup?
Yeah, on HLTV at least.
They were all really bad questions. Yeah,
those are pretty bad questions.
Don't flame the chat, bro.
Scream and
Who do you think might be MIBR's
so.
fifth? We covered that. Will Simple stay in Na'Vi if Zeus retires? Yes, he will. He'll probably sing and jump for joy. Who was best today? Sponge or Banks? Striker or Prof? Sponge, definitely. Fuck you, Martin.
I think the question about the number one of HLTV.org's 2018, I have no idea. I'm not affiliated with
So
HLTV
who do you
Dog
think
at
it's
all.
going to be?
But at 100% has to be simple or device, and that just depends.
Yeah.
If HLTV.org think that winning the trophies is more important than dominating consistently with a bunch of bricks on your back. So like that's
Exactly, literally
that's it,
carry
ladies and
bagging.
gentlemen. You can turn it off now. Don't turn it off. Follow every day, but it's one of those two. And if I'm wrong, I'll be sad.
No, I mean, as somebody who also doesn't know, I don't know anybody aside from like one more. But it's obvious to anybody that those two are going to be top two. Like that would be very, very surprising if they were.
Yeah. Gotta be simple. Gotta be simple.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Nobody knows. Like Peter says, just 2 people in the world know the full list at this point. So no point in asking anybody.
What can you say about Yanko now he's done leading? If you watch the VOD, we discussed that earlier on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do you think Tarek will end up? We kind of covered that earlier, yeah.
I mean, it would take like energy probably buying him out. I'm not sure if anybody else could at this point. Like that it would be interested in, unless he goes back to Cloud9 at some point. But I don't know.
Okay.
Could also happen.
Can I make an executive decision?
There we go.
Yes.
We're stopping the show right now. This is it.
Doesn't want any more chat questions. Okay,
Yes.
Prof's calling it. Twitch chat, Prof hates you. That's what we'll end on. Episode 1 of Season 3 is done. Thank you so much for Prof, Striker, and Sponge. Sponge, what are you showing us there? I can't say my 8-bit mode.
I got given
Explain
some
it.
paraphernalia today by a monk in the city as I was shopping for shoes. So everybody, be good, be kind to your fellow human, make love not war.
Peace.
That does a lot of that. We'll see you guys later. And yes, Sponge is good at RuneScape. It's his main game. That's what he's going to go be an analyst in next. See you next time.